words that start with E. All right, good evening. Welcome everyone to the Milton School Committee meeting of January 19th, 2022. It's great to see you all this evening. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any additions, subtractions, or changes? I know we want one change. Yes, Member Rosemarin?
Yeah, I just would like to ask to have a brief update from the Strategic Planning Committee prior to the budget discussion.
Okay, so we're going to move 6 to 5 and 5 to 6.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? All right, any other changes or additions? No? All right, so may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All right, second. All right, so I'm actually going to do a roll call vote because it occurred to me, like, if you can't see people voting, you need to hear them. I was thinking about this the other day. So Dr. Cricket?
Yes.
All right, Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
And Member Eberhardt? Yes. Wonderful. All right, well, we might as well get started because we have a very busy agenda. Sorry, guys. We're going to start with the superintendent's report. Welcome, Superintendent Jett.
Thank you and good evening to all. Our first item on the agenda is going to be the presentation by the Glover Site Council. I will turn it over to Principal Karen McDavitt to introduce her team, and then they will go through their Site Council presentation.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Jett, and thank you to the school committee and to anybody watching. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share a little bit about what is so wonderful about Glover. And what is wonderful about Glover is what is wonderful about the Milton Public Schools. We're one of 6, and together we are an amazing school district. So I'm going to share my screen, hopefully, and I'm thrilled to have members of my site council with me. If one of them, Ms. Craven, can you just unmute and tell me if I'm good here?
You are good. We can see it.
Oh, look at that. Okay, so we are here and we're so excited to share with you some data highlights and some really good work that we are doing at Glover School. And I am joined tonight by some members of our site council. Melissa Craven, our assistant principal and curriculum coordinator, Rachel Spitz, grade 4 teacher, Lauren Vanacore, who started the year as our 2nd grade teacher and is now our early literacy and learning coach. She will be on later to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her new role as part of the grant that Susan Maselli obtained for the district. So that's really exciting. And I'm also joined by 2 amazing and supportive family members, Kevin Fleming, who is a veteran site council member. He's been with me for a long time, and Allie Petrie, who joined us this year. So those are our friends who are here. Dr. Dakak and Kelly Sia and Nicole Grant Heel took a bye this year, just in the interest of moving us along so that I know you have a jam-packed agenda. I know you all like to see how we are in terms of our student population. You will see the COT abbreviation that stands for COTOT. Glover School does house both the COTOT program and the STEP program. COTOT is evolving into more of a program that supports students with specific learning disabilities in the area of reading and dyslexia and language-based learning disabilities. So that's been really exciting to see that evolution, and our special educators have been trained and are ready to support our students. Rachel, who is here tonight, is a COTOT general educator. So if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to ask her. She's amazing. But as you can see, our population is big. We, for the first time in my career here in Milton, have strands that are bigger than we've ever had. We're at 630 students, which is the most we've ever had here at Glover. And as you can see, we have 5 kindergartens, 5 seconds, 5 thirds, and 5 fourths. And if you'll let me say, just, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but that additional classroom that we assumed this year made it impossible for us to have a music classroom. So if you look at Glover School, any space that is big enough for a classroom is a classroom, with the exception of the library and the gymnasium and the cafeteria. Everything else is a space that would not be big enough for a classroom. So again, we all know we are busting at the seams, but we are growing, and we love all of our friends, but we're running out of space, as you all know. So our school improvement plan goals are, really based on our belief that with a safe and supportive learning environment, with diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront, we can maximize our students' academic achievement. So we sort of see the pink and the yellow as the foundation upon which we can build the blue. Without a safe and supportive learning environment, and without an environment that makes sure that every student and every family member and every staff member feels safe and valued and heard and supported and included, we can't maximize every student's academic potential. So Glover School has always operated since I've been there on this premise that we need to create a culture and a climate and an environment where every student feels that they are able to succeed in order to maximize their talents. So we're going to start with the academic achievement portion, and Ms. Craven has some amazing data to share with you. It's really exciting data. And I think that overall as a district, we've really moved in a very data-driven direction. I'm hearing more than I've ever heard about teachers sitting down with Lexia and iReady data and really breaking down the domains that the students are struggling with and thinking about interventions, targeted interventions and supports. So we're very fortunate to have evolved over the last few years. When I got here a long time ago, it was Fountas and Pinnell, and that was it. That's all we had, right? And everybody talked about the F and P, and we knew what letter everybody was. We have so much more information now. We know so much more about our kids because of the really personalized learning platforms and adaptive assessments and things that we have. So we'll start with academic achievement. And Melissa will share a little bit about the things that we're really proud of at Glover. We will then go into just briefly my wheelhouse, which is the social, emotional, behavioral health, making sure every child is learning in a safe and supportive environment and our efforts in that area. And then we will touch upon our third goal, which is to promote and foster an environment that is affirming and celebratory of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Craven, who is going to begin talking about our academic achievement.
Thank you for that introduction. And I also wanted to thank school committee and Superintendent Jett and Assistant Superintendent Sheehan and Dexter for having us. So as Karen said, I'm going to be focusing on goal 1, which is our academic achievement goal. And I'm going to talk us through how we use some of our Lexia and iReady data to drive our instruction and to remediate some of the tier 3 supports that might be necessary for some of our students. So here is just a quick little glimpse of the curricula that we use in the Milton Public Schools. We have Reach for Reading, which we are on year 5 of implementing. We have Everyday Math, but we are currently in a curriculum review for math. I am on the grade 5 team, so it's been really great to work across the district by grade levels, led by Brian Selig, our math director, to look and kind of investigate different math curriculums. The same is happening with our social studies curriculum led by Kim Kaplan. And then we continue to use FOSS and GAFI in our French immersion program. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so I am going to quickly go over our MCAS data from last year, but I do think it's important to keep in mind that the data, comparing the data from last year to previous years, most recently 2019, is a little bit trickier than in years past because there's many variables that can come into play. There was only 1 day of MCAS implementation for both ELA and math, as well as it just coming off of a pandemic year and with a hybrid model. So we will go through our MCAS data, but it is a little tricky to kind of compare from years past. So looking at our district-wide ELA MCAS data, the yellow circles are Glover's data, and you'll see those green lines with the number above it. That's the Milton Public Schools meeting or exceeding line. The red bars are Milton Public Schools meeting exceeding for each school as well as the district compared to the statewide meeting and exceeding. So again, although, for example, our grade 4 and our grade 5, we are above the meeting and exceeding line from 2019, we are looking at our grade 3, which are our current grade 4 students, and to see how we can help remediate some of those skills using data to focus in on individual need. Next, please. The same as with our math data. Here we can see that our current 4th graders were actually exactly at the same level for meeting and exceeding in 2019. Our current 5th graders were right at the meeting exceeding line, and our current 6th graders were just below. So again, using our iReady data, which we'll get more into because it's our current data, that actually is so current that some grades are still actually taking it right now. The window for iReady and Lexia for our winter implementation is happening currently. We have a lot of great data, but there are a couple of areas where we'll talk through. We're not quite done yet, but it is our most current up-to-date data. Here is our grade 5, which is our current 6th graders who are at Pierce right now, their science MCAS scores. And across the district, they did pretty great for their science MCAS, which was really wonderful to see. Next, please. And then this is a little a visual to compare from previous years. So you'll see we have our 2017, 2018, 2019 data, as well as our 2021. So there is less green and blue area, which is our meeting and exceeding, compared to 2018, 2019. But again, keeping in mind those different variables from years past. All right, so getting into our iReady data, which is our individualized platform that we use for math. It's a really great online tool that gives specific skills for each individual student. So every kid, their profile on iReady is very different. It depends on how they place in their while they complete the different, the fall and winter and spring assessments. And then it gives us really great data to then use to remediate specific skills. Next slide, please. So here's a quick overall of our fall and winter data. So just to keep in mind for our winter data, kindergarten just completed their fall placement data the beginning of December, and they'll take it again in the beginning of March, end of February. So we have our fall kindergarten data, but they will not complete their winter data for another month or so. And then for just today, as of today, we have our first, second, third, and fifth grade winter data complete. We do not have our fourth grade data complete, however, so just keeping that in mind as we do go through. But as an overall, you'll see that in the fall, we had 40% of our students who placed either on grade level or above, whereas right now we're seeing 61% of our students in the winter who are either on or above grade level, which is really tremendous growth to see just within a few months. So keeping that in mind though, again, that this does not include kindergarten and fourth grade for our winter. So this just gets a little bit more specific by domain. So we have number and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data and geometry. And again, just keeping a good eye on those green bars, because you'll see that in each domain, we have seen tremendous growth in each specific domain from the fall to the winter. Here is a summary by grade level. So we just kind of put this together. Over on the side, you'll see different percentages. And the first one is either end of the year above grade level. The second one is on grade level. The middle is below grade level. The second to last section is one grade level below. And the last one is three or more grade levels below. So you'll see that in each grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 5, again, looking at the way that the green bar is increasing for our winter data. So we are able to use this specific data to help drive instruction. So that's both within individual classrooms for each individual student. And we're also using this data to think district-wide for programmings like Beyond the Bell, which is going to be a district-wide effort this year, which will be super exciting to talk more about as we have more details in the next few weeks.
And just if I can chime in, I have to draw attention to the grade 1 data where you can see that we have completely eliminated any students who are more than one grade level below since the fall. So we look at data like this and we see what is it that we're doing well and what is it that we need to continue to do. But in addition to looking at that green, we are also excited to watch that red section shrink as the gap closes. Do you want us to stop and ask questions? Do you want us to keep going? I see member Ross Denny has her hand up. I don't know what the format is.
Oh, sure. That's fine. You want to take some questions? It's a lot of information. So member Ross Denny, would you like to ask a question, please?
I'd like to thank you so much for being so transparent about the data. I have 2 questions. For the students, especially, for example, the first grade you mentioned, where you've seen significant gains, could you speak to some of the strategies you've employed? And for the kids who are still struggling, What are you seeing? Like, is there a profile or a trend, whether it's in what they're learning or their experience in school, or anything that can help us have an insight as to who is still struggling?
So those are great questions. So for your first question, one really great feature of iReady is that once you get your student profile, it kind of breaks it down by specific skills. So for example, if a student was showing that they needed more support in a certain area, you could go back and assign them specific review content targeted just for them. So you can individualize their actual iReady profile by using the data to then give them specific skills to practice. For any other trends that we're seeing, we haven't really dug that deep in yet of maybe considering which students might have been in the full hybrid model, which students might have been remote. However, as we think of some of the students who might need more tier 3 supports, that's where we'd use this data to help with like beyond the bell programmings to then give that necessary support. So we will use this winter and fall data to just kind of see any trends. If we've noticed any, I'll be working with the other 3 curriculum coordinators as well as the elementary level curriculum coordinators in the next few weeks leading up to our Beyond the Bell programming, and really using our elementary level coordinators, Brian Salig, Kat DeRoche, to help drive that instruction and to see who needs those tier 3 supports.
And if I can just add on, I think that this data is so helpful because it allows teachers to have really informed conversations about each of their students and about each profile. And what we're able to do that we hadn't been able to do previously is then take that information and take the 3 kids who are struggling with this particular concept, and I see teachers every day who are saying to me, all right, this week I am all over these 3 kids on this particular operation because I see that they're just not progressing in this area. So our flexible grouping, our differentiation is informed by data in ways that it never has been before because of this platform and Lexia, which are adaptive and diagnostic and really, really effective in helping the teachers to easily access data and use it to inform instruction. So maybe we'll get into the Lexia data, right, Ms. Craven?
Sounds good. All righty. So just like iReady, Lexia is another online platform for literacy that individualizes student profiles. So we have our fall and winter data. And for the most part, we have almost all of our students have completed the winter data. There might be a few missing here and there, but for the most part, we're looking pretty good with our completion of our winter Lexia data. So on the left, our first circle graph, you'll see that we have our green, light gray, and dark gray different areas, and that just shows our reading success probability. So that means that what percent of students, 70% or higher, are right now slated to meet grade level benchmarks by the end of the year. So for our fall data, we had 31% of our students who had an RSP of 70% or higher. Now looking over at our winter data, the growth to see 48%. It was kind of neat to see how our 48% of reading success probability was 30% or lower, and then it kind of flipped to our winter data to see that that was 48% of our students for 70% or higher. So that's just a little glimpse of just the whole school profile.
And again, down at the bottom, you can see that fall to winter, and you can see those green bars in every grade growing, and our gray bars shrinking, which is what we are looking for in kindergarten terms.
So here is our school profile for our grades K to 2. Again, side by side, fall to winter, and these are our specific domains. So you'll see that in kindergarten, They are tested on phonological awareness, letter sounds, vocab pairs. Whereas in first grade, they'll do word reading, vocab pairs, and following directions. And then the same for second grade. They have word reading, spelling, vocab pairs, and following directions. And again, just focusing in on that growth, those bars that are just keep on moving more to the right, which is what we like to see. This is our school profile for our grades 3 to 5. We see our fall and our winter data. Grades 3 to 5, they focus on word recognition, vocab knowledge, syntactic knowledge, and reading comp. And again, we're seeing growth in all domains. And I do have to highlight the fact that really this goes to show just how hard our Glover staff is working. They really hit the ground running from day one. And this is not just, it's the teachers and every staff in this building that really all together work to see this growth.
Thank you, Ms. Craven. So one thing that is new at Glover School and across the district is the addition of an early literacy and learning coach. So we do have reading specialists. We are so fortunate to have reading specialist support in our primary grades. But what we have identified is that we need additional support specifically in preschool and kindergarten. So I had to play nice in the sandbox and share my second grade teacher with the district, but I'm a good sharer. And so Miss Vanacore, who actually has been with me even prior to Milton, right, Lauren, is an amazing educator, and she has taken on the role of early literacy and learning coach. And we thought this is a really good opportunity to highlight this new position and the work that she's doing to continue, like Ms. Craven said, to move those bars is a collective effort, and it's all of us. It's every single one of us on this call. It's every educator. It's every family member. It's every student. So Lauren, would you like to share a little about your position?
Sure. Thank you, Karen. I'm very excited to be taking on this new role in the district. As Karen said, I'm the early literacy and learning coach for preschool and kindergarten across the district. And my position was created, as you might know, as part of the action plan that Susan Maselli developed in response to the disproportionate number of children who identify as Black or African American who are being identified as communication disabled. So I am now an extra layer of support that can be offered to some of our students at Glover in kindergarten. And I can work with students. I provide support to the staff and also for families. So one of the jobs that I've been doing is I gave students in kindergarten a phonological awareness screener that gave us some information about specific phonological awareness skills that students might have a little bit of a deficit in. And we've looked at that data along with our Lexia data, and that's helping us to identify students who are in the subgroup who might be at risk for some struggles with reading acquisition. And so we've been able to identify students and start putting interventions in place that give support with phonological awareness, and also could give some support with helping students to build their general content knowledge and vocabulary through different literature and trying to be a little bit more culturally responsive with our instruction. So I'm really excited to be taking on this role and excited to see where it can go and the kind of supports we can be adding into place.
Thank you, Lauren. So that's just one of the supports that we have district-wide that is really helping us move those bars. Now into my wheelhouse. I promise I won't go too deep, but this is where I live, and this is what I live for. So I am a firm believer, as is the rest of Glover School, that if we create a safe and supportive environment, our students will succeed to their fullest potential because they know we believe in them, every single one of them. We know them. They're always shocked that I know every kid's name and they like to quiz me on it. But that's what's important to me, right? I may not get all of my emails answered, and I may not get all of my boxes checked every day, but I'll see kids every day. And I'll work with kids, and I'll laugh with kids, and I'll play with kids. And that's what That's what elementary school is all about, in my opinion. So we have this Glover kid thing that we've had for a long time now. It's sort of a part of their fiber of their being. Every kid knows it, every kid lives it, every kid breathes it. And when they forget, they remind each other of what it means to be a part of this community and how special and privileged we all are to be a part of it. So it is rooted in our principles of PBIS. So we continue to work to improve student outcomes, to reduce disciplinary action, and to really remind students and teach students of positive and expected behavior. In addition, and down there is the Glover Class of the Week. That's a new addition this year. The kids love getting the Glover Class of the Week. They get a big sign on their door and they take their picture, and it's very special. So they earn their little duck feet on the pond, because of course we have to have the ducks in there. But it's really special, and I'm happy to share more about it anytime. But in the interest of time, just know that our PBIS work continues to thrive at Glover. In addition, we were fortunate to learn from adjustment and counselor extraordinaire, Jenny Beliveau, who's also the co-chair of the SEL advisory team with me. And we are at the beginning stages of really making sure all of our educators across the district are using instructional practices that are rooted in trauma-informed care. So we've engaged in some professional development and continue to engage in it. And then also out of the SEL advisory team, Glover, as well as Tucker, Cunningham, and Collicott, and actually all the schools participated in the IntelliSpark SEL assessment platform. And that's really exciting. We're getting the data from that shortly. I don't know how much you guys know about the IntelliSpark work that we've been doing, but the district has partnered because there really wasn't an elementary survey. So we had done the middle and high last year and gotten great data and results. But they didn't have an elementary version. They wanted one, we wanted one. So we said, how can we work together? We brought on a researcher, and we sort of are in a big pilot. There's a couple other districts across the country who are also doing it. We're getting that data in, and we're calibrating that data to hopefully be able to help us understand. We're looking at things like belonging, decision-making, relationships, self-management, well-being, connection, engagement, relationship skills, self-awareness, and social awareness. And of course, all of the elementary kids think they're pretty perfect in a lot of those things. So it's fun to look at that data and compare it with what we know about our kids. And I think my favorite thing to do, and Lauren and Rachel can attest to what sometimes becomes open mic night for Mrs. McDevitt. And it started in the pandemic, and it started when we were in full school closure, and I needed my Glover kids to know I was thinking about them, and I was there with them every step of the way. So I started recording daily morning announcements. And they were such a hit that when we went into the hybrid remote model, because so many of our kiddos were remote, I wanted to make sure they felt connected every day to the school. That's so important. And now we're all back, which is wonderful. But the teachers seem to enjoy having this to kick off their day every day. And actually, Rachel will touch on this briefly in terms of the intentionality behind these announcements. So we are tied to all sorts of things that are happening in the world around us to help teach our kids. Right now, we're in Advocacy Month in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. We're talking about the power of advocacy, and we have a fourth grader coming on tomorrow to talk about the reason why we cut the strings on our masks before we throw them out. Did you know that? I didn't know that, but Blake taught us that. So she does the morning announcements, and I do them, and everybody does them, and they're wonderful. So I just want to highlight that as part of our school culture. It's become a big deal. And then just for a little giggle, because our kids are just so cute at the elementary level, we do an anti-bullying week, and we really focus. We have amazing lessons that adjustment counselor Brian Powers has created. We all take the Kids Against Bullying pledge. We watch videos, we do activities, we do simulations. But at the end of all of it, we ask all of our kids, do you have a trusted adult here at Glover School? And we find out that every kid does. And if they don't, we know who they are and we find them. them someone, because it is so critically important that every child feel that they have some champion and somebody who believes in them and somebody who they can talk to. So I took directly misspellings and all, just some highlights. So I thought Mrs. MaBlank, that's Nurse LeBlanc. But I just thought I should highlight some of the things. We've got custodial staff, we've got teachers, we've got support staff, we've got administrators, we've got parents, we've got guardians, we've got siblings. My favorite is Mama, Papa, and Mrs. McDevitt. That's my personal favorite. So just thought we should share some of what we do to celebrate our kids and to help them feel connected and engaged. We have amazing student leaders who help us in all different ways. We have a school spirit team and a newspaper, and our 4th and 5th graders read with our 1st and 2nd graders. We have kids who stand every single day at the door. And you would think that a 5th grader doesn't want to stand at the door with a yellow smiley face hanging off his or her neck that says, how can I help? But the truth is they love doing it, and they stand there every day and they greet every kid that comes in. And it's the little things that aren't so little after all. So those are just some highlights of our work to build a culture and climate where every kid wants to skip across that bridge and walk into that school and be the best that they can be, because we know that they can and we believe in them. And then just briefly to highlight our work on our 3rd goal around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Member White, sorry, I just saw your hand go up.
That's okay. I'm going to go back a little bit and just ask you for the reading specialist, because we're going to be looking at the budget later on this evening. How do you decide who gets to see the reading specialist, and how they decide how a referral gets made or how their time is used?
That's a brilliant question. I think a lot of it is rooted in the data, but Melissa or Lauren, do either of you want to chime in with an answer for Member White?
Sure. So were you thinking specifically of Lauren Vanderkoor's early literacy position?
Yes.
Awesome. So Lauren, do you want to speak to that one then?
Sure thing. So my position really targets students who identify as Black or African American. So that's kind of the high priority area that we look at. And so when we take all of our data, first we looked at students who identify as Black or African American, and we looked at the data and said, all right, in this subgroup, who, based on the data, and then also based on some teacher input from what they see all day from their students, who might be at risk for some learning struggles when it comes to reading acquisition. And then those are the students that we decide to prioritize for intervention. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. So Ms. Spitz, 4th grade teacher, do you want to highlight some of our work in DEI?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Spitz. I teach 4th grade. And this is our 3rd goal, which focuses on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So just to summarize, in alignment with district DEI work, Glover continues to focus on making sure that every student, staff member, and family member feels seen, valued, supported, and heard. And one way we're doing that is by the Diversity Reads Book Club. We've been lucky to have a lot of authors come and speak to our students or Zoom with our students. The kids love it, and the ones that I've attended, the students ask really great questions, and it sparks a really good conversation about different cultures, and students are able to see themselves represented in literature. A few authors we've had this year are Kim Baker. She's a bicultural Latinx author, and she met with students in grades 3 to 5 to talk about her novel, The Water Bears, in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month in September. We also had Dawn Quigley. She met with our students in grades 3 to 5 across the district. Dawn is a citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Ojibwe, North Dakota. And we met with her as part of Indigenous Peoples Month in October. And she also presented to all K-2 students across the district and read aloud from her book, Jojo McCoons. And so you can see some of those pictures on the next slide from when those authors presented to students. And we're looking forward to potentially having Antoine Eady, the author of Nigel and the Moon, and Andrea Williams, and she's the author of We Are Family, written with LeBron James, and Baseball's Leading Lady, and that's a story about Effa Manley, the first woman in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and also a Negro Leagues team owner. And like Karen was talking about, this is one of my favorite parts of the day is story time with Mrs. McDavitt, and just her morning announcements each day. She comes on and talks about different topics in books that support students' understanding of different backgrounds, cultures, beliefs. She's made videos about Hispanic Heritage Month, holidays celebrated around the world, Indigenous Peoples Month, and this month to celebrate Martin Luther King. She explained advocacy and ways that kids can become advocates for something they believe in. And so we've had staff members, students, families, they were all invited to share ways that they advocate in the community. And students were challenged to become advocates themselves. And one really cool story that we heard, it's in the upper left corner, that's paraprofessional Deb Mullins. And she spoke about meeting Martin Luther King Jr.'s son. So she was in Atlanta and she was driving by the church where Martin Luther King was a preacher at, and she saw someone that looked a lot like him standing outside of the church. So her and her mother got out and they approached him, and it was Martin Luther King Jr.'s son. So she shared that story with Glover, and it was really cool. And she talked about how advocates are just people like you and I, and they have a mission. And Martin Luther King Jr. is a really good example of that, an advocate who brought change. So that is what we're doing at Glover for our third goal. Karen, I think we're turning it over to Allie and Kevin.
Yeah, so thank you. So just to wrap up, I hope you'll indulge us for a moment. Allie Petrie is an amazing Glover parent, and she was going to share a little bit about another thing we really believe here at Glover, which is that gratitude is really important, and gratitude spreads positivity. And we can have days where we're pretty mired in what is not going right and all the things that need to be done better. But ultimately, at the end of the day, little moments where people share gratitude for the really great work that all of us do make a big difference. So Allie, did you want to share a little bit about this last slide before you indulge us one more time?
Sure, yes. And I think, Karen, it was such a good point talking about how being a Glover kid is being safe, responsible, respectful, and kind. And the kids are so grateful for that environment that they have. And so as parents, we, of course, are so thankful to all the families that exist in the Glover community, the administration, school committee, and, of course, the teachers and the students at the school. So being grateful, I think, is something that is at the core of being a Glover kid.
Thank you, Allie. So you don't have to read all these things right now, but it means the world to us. And I tell the families all the time, and the teachers do too, a little shout out every once in a while makes a big difference. So before we sign off, and we're happy to answer any questions, every once in a while, a Superintendent Jet needs a little kid fix, and he'll stop by Glover and we will walk around Glover, and he comes out with the greatest stories and so many belly laughs. And so before we leave you, from a place of gratitude, the school committee and central office administrators, at the risk of sounding like I'm kissing up, I'm not, we sometimes miss the opportunity to express our gratitude. And so this is Glover's opportunity to share some joy and to show you how happy we are and how much we are learning. And I think it's important to remember why we do what we do. And we do this because of our kids. And so it will be quick, I promise you, but Ms. Craven has worked her magic. And we want to leave you with a smile, because a smile is what's so important to us every day at Glover School. So we're just going to share a little bit with you to end. end our presentation. We can take it higher. So thanks for letting us share a little joy, a little Glover love with all of you. And I hope that made you smile. And I hope that reminds you of why we do what we do and why we are here night after night. And remember, Ross Denny, you got to eat dinner tonight. So thank you. But I know there's many nights you don't get to eat dinner. So it's our opportunity to just share some love, some Glover love, and let you know that we're thriving and we're doing great. And it's thanks to everybody. So we're happy to answer any questions you guys might have. And
Member White, did you have your hand up? You had your hand up.
Well, I don't have a question, but I have a compliment. And I'll tell you, for a minute, I forgot about COVID and all the stress of the year and a half that we've been through. And, you know, and it just looking at the kids' faces and looking at all the hard work everyone's doing, just makes you think, you know, I want to thank you all, the staff of Glover, for all the work that you do and how lucky the kids are to be surrounded by all that, you know, caring and concerned adults in their lives. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty. And I was thinking about your reading specialist question, and I know Lauren mentioned specifically with her position, but with all of our positions, I think that's why we started with the data. I wanted to add in that, you know, all of our work that we do with all of our students is grounded in what we find and what we see in the data and the needs that come out. So I had been thinking more about your question. So thank you, Betty, for those kind words.
Member Ross-Denny.
Similar to Member White, I've been a big fan of Karen's for many years because I saw the change in the culture at Glover that took place after she joined the community. Whether it was amongst the faculty or the students, you've done an amazing job inspiring your teachers to do great work. I especially want to thank you for your focus on being reflective on the data that you have and your partnership with Sue Maselli, because I know from my experience with Lauren, she never taught my kids, but I remember her from the Glover Site Council and what an amazing teacher she was. So for you to give her the opportunity to work district-wide to help and support more students means a lot, because it shows that the district is growing in a positive way that reflects equity. Just the simple fact that Lauren is capable of supporting the students that need it most to address our needs around disproportionality means that we're just being more thoughtful about the work we do. And that is the type of staff that we're very fortunate to have here, that I think for those who don't work in education, you don't realize that, you know, with any profession you have your top 5 and top 10% of people that just do an amazing job. And Milton has a disproportionate number of those folks. And I would count Karen and Lauren on that list. And I thank you for what you do. And I look forward to hearing at the end of the school year, before we see the MCAS in the fall, the types of gains and what you've learned from the data, because what I'm hoping is going to happen centrally is that what has been working will be disseminated. I think actually it was Janet Sheen who shared with me that, you know, all of our teachers are now using iReady and Lexia to reflect on student work. And the more conversations that teachers have together to learn from one another about how to support students who are struggling, we will see gaps narrow for every group, but in every subgroup. So thank you for what you've done, and have a wonderful rest of your school year in spite of COVID.
Member Rose Marin.
Yes, thank you for this wonderful presentation and for all the wonderful work that the whole Glover School team is doing with our kids. And it's been quite a couple of years that we've all been through, and the fall data to see where kids were when they came back full time, and to see the huge gains that we've made in the short time that they've been there between fall and winter is really dramatic, and it's so encouraging that we can meet the goals that we're setting, and you're showing that, and the personalized learning that's happening, that's with the help of wonderful teachers and the Lexia and iReady programs that are providing all kinds of information about our students is just, it's coming together. It feels like it's all coming together at just the right time, that the kids really need you. And so thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing, Lauren. And I also look forward to seeing where we are at the end of the year, and after having everyone back together. And thank you.
Dr. Craig. Up.
You wouldn't think I'd still be doing that. I want to echo a little bit of what Member Ross-Denny said, and a little bit of what Member Rose Marin said. First of all, Karen, I have been affiliated with Glover since before you got there. And the leadership there before you arrived was, to put it nicely, inconsistent. And the change that you brought, I was at your interview, and the energy you brought was tremendous. I felt almost blown away by it. You were so energetic that night, and you've really proven to be an amazingly thoughtful force for change and compassion and just all good things at Glover. And it's in such good hands. And I've said things like this to you before, but I wanted to make sure that I said it again publicly because my time on the school committee is nearly at an end. So, and I believe what you said, which is we all need to hear from other people sometimes the good that we're doing. You clearly also have an amazing team working with you here. And even though I've never had the pleasure of working with any of these individuals, it's clear in the results that they're doing a great job. Like Member Rosemarin, I'm encouraged, really encouraged by the growth that that your teachers, your staff, the administration have been able to make in a very short period of time. I will also say, though, as chair of finance, and I'll get a chance to say this a little later in the meeting, I'm always looking at where we need help, and we clearly still do, right? Those losses aren't completely made up. We're not even back to where we were in 2019. And so it's amazing that Ms. Vanacore is doing the work she's doing, but she's one person is it across 4 schools, Lauren? Okay, so across 4 schools, that's not enough to make up for the kinds of losses and the kinds of remediation, the kind of interventions that we need. And so I guess I want to say this is great, and I hope we have more of it and that we're able to see more of it because we get you and all the schools more help in those areas. So I miss the Ducks, I miss Turner Pond, I miss you, Ms. McDavitt, and Godspeed. You're doing great.
Dr. Carroll?
Thank you. Thank you all so much for an excellent presentation. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that do connect to other comments, but that really stood out to me in terms of how what I learned from your presentation sort of connections I make to the bigger picture of things we're talking about as a district. And the first thing was around your 3 goals and the way that you presented them. So I know you talked about these as 3 distinct goals: a safe and supportive learning environment, the DEI, and then number 1, academic achievement. I really appreciated, even more than like the presentation of those as 3 different goals, the way you, Mrs. McDavitt, talked about that as like the SEL piece and the DEI piece are the foundation for the academic achievement piece. And like without focusing on those so important elements, like we will not achieve the academic achievement. And that is a mindset shift that I feel like is underway in Milton, in our broader community, and sort of our understanding that we're not compromising rigor by investing in safe and supportive learning environments, in making equitable, inclusive spaces for our diverse learners, but these pieces are all intertwined. And that I was so pleased to see you showcase that at your school level, because that is the conversation we need to have as a district, and we're having it. But there's so much more work for us to do to really integrate those pieces. And I think many of us see that as really the mandate for the next assistant superintendent of curriculum to be the person who can kind of help us synthesize that work. And it just felt clear the way that was presented. The other piece I really wanted to appreciate is how you combined your data, which you presented in a very accessible way with detail, but it still felt very easy to follow. You combined that with the joy piece. And again, as a district, this is really important. It's not like either we're data driven or we are joyful as a community. And in fact, what I appreciated was how you so palpably are taking joy in the data, in your progress. And I really look forward to the time when we as a community can take joy in our data. We had a district-wide data presentation before winter break that was not very joyful. I mean, it was, for me personally, the opposite of joyful, okay? I believe that we can come to a place as a district where we celebrate our progress and our data as a district. And so thank you for modeling that that's where we are trying to go, and it's possible and it's already happening. And that was, I think, really great. And then finally, connected to that, as you shared about iReady and Lexia, those were investments that we chose to make as a community. And this comes back to what you were saying, Dr. Craighead. Those platforms are not inexpensive. Obviously, though, they've been worth that investment because, as you articulated, they are now allowing us to have such a richer understanding of our students, where they are, what their needs are, so that teachers can respond in real time, which is never possible to do before. So I just want to make sure we're all recognizing that but for the investments in those platforms, we wouldn't have that progress. And we are, as you said, Dr. Craighead, getting ready to propose next year's budget. We're talking about investing in different ways, in new resources and different tools. But it's, hoping for similar results in terms of impact. And so those were just some of the things that jumped out at me, but really thank you very much for starting off our, I'm sure, lengthy evening with such a exciting presentation.
Yeah, you're right. I thank my very eloquent, thoughtful colleagues on the school committee, because the only thing I can think about is, as I watch the presentation, is that for me, it's that connection over time to learning for children and families. And I think for myself, when I watch the joy, and sometimes we hear from families who desperately want things to be the way they were, before the pandemic started. And when we have presentations from site councils, we see that there's still lots of joy in the learning for students. And also that I'm hopeful for families that the things they thought of before will come back again. And for me, I think about what you said, Mrs. McDavitt, that all the kids. And like Dr. Craighead, I was involved in some of the interview processes when you were applying for Glover. And I remember saying to then Superintendent Gormley, well, look, she'll go home, she'll know every kid and all their names, and she'll go home to the parents, and the kids will say, the principal knows me, and that will make everybody happy. And it's true, right? That piece where you invest in a human and you have a trusted adult in school, you can't measure that truly in data, but the long-term impact of that is measurable over time. And that you had the lantern parade in there and ended with that piece, just really touched my heart. That's the thread for me when I think about Glover. So thank you to all of you for your hard work and your dedication and your commitment to children and dealing with the pandemic and bringing joy every day to your work, because that's what lingers for children long after they're no longer a part of the Glover School.
Thank you all very much for these amazing comments. And Dr. Carroll, I appreciate your thinking around my thinking about the foundation upon which academic achievement and success is built. And I think Ada may be previewing later today. I saw her smiling, but Susan Maselli and I partnered together with other amazing leaders across the district to sort of rethink and reimagine the district-wide strategic plan And I imagine you might see some similarities between what I just presented and what you will hear from Ada, because I'm not alone in the belief and understanding that we have to build the environments that are right and the situations that are that allow our kids, all of our kids, to succeed beyond their fullest potential. So when you hear a little bit about the strategic plan, you might have some deja vu, and that might be because I had a little hand in it. Thank you guys for giving us this opportunity, and I'm glad we made you smile. That was our goal tonight. So thank you.
Thank you to all the parents, and thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Thank you, Glover team. Next on the agenda, or excuse me, are there any last minute questions or anything for Karen McDavid or the team? So I want to thank all of them for coming. Before we get to the Milton High School program of studies, because it is moving pretty, we're moving a little later than we anticipated, I want to give the opportunity for members of this steering committee. I will introduce Meg Matthews. And Meg, if you would take the lead in terms of introducing the folks that are with you this evening, and I'll turn it over to you and we can do the program of studies following this presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. Hi, Meg.
Hi everyone. I'm Meg Matthews. Thank you, Superintendent Jett. Hello everyone. I'm Meg Matthews, and along with Shelley Sturdivant and Monique DeBarros, we are here tonight as representatives from the Milton Public Schools Equity Steering Committee that has been meeting since the summer of 2021. We are members of the Family and Community Engagement Subcommittee. And we want to talk a little bit about a survey that's going to be going out soon, and to gain some community buy-in to some of the efforts that we've been taking and want to move forward. So I'm going to let Shelley take it from here. We do have a PowerPoint to kind of help guide our conversation, and Shelley's going to lead off with that. Do we have somebody who's going to be, I know do we have somebody who's going to be presenting that, our PowerPoint? We had sent it to Ms. Roche.
If you want me to share it, I'll share it.
That'd be great.
Okay, hold on one second. Give me a second. So it might not look the same when I share it, just to let you guys know. Okay. It may be smaller. And you guys let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay. All righty.
All right. Just as Meg said, on behalf of all members of the steering committee, we just want to thank the school committee for inviting us to present to you today. Again, my name is Shelley Sturdivant. My spouse and I have 14-year-old twins. Our children attended Glover. They attended since the first grade when we moved to Milton. My son attended Pierce, and he's now a 9th grader at Milton High. And his twin sister has attended an out-of-district special education school since the 6th grade. In fact, she was a product of the Glover co-taught classrooms. And again, we are here today to introduce ourselves to the school committee and the Milton community. Our presentation will provide a short background as to the committee's work since being formed in July of 2021, and our primary focus on the steering committee's definition of equity. As you know, a major finding and recommendation from the quality review was that the district developed a common understanding and definition of equity. If we could go on to slide 2.
Sorry, it's not letting me do that. Hold on one second. Give me a second. Let me just stop sharing. You can go ahead and talk, and then what I'll do is, if you have a copy of the slide in front of you, it might allow you to do it. I just can't right now. I don't know why I can't do both. So I do apologize. Get over here and see if I can do it. Like, there you go.
There we go. All right, and who are we? The steering committee is a group of volunteers, and we currently have 8 members. We have 3 teachers, 4 parents or caregivers, and we have 1 high school student. With the resignation of the director of equity, we are now led by Superintendent Jet until that position is filled. We're looking to actually add a few more members, especially middle and high school students. Having their input, having the input of students has really been and continues to be critical to our work. And if we could go on to slide 3. And just a brief history of how we got started. The steering committee, the brief history. It has been charged with guiding the development and implementation of Milton Public Schools equity audit and the action planning process. We are to analyze the equity audit results, identify root causes of equity challenges, and identify goals and objectives for equity planning. As you can tell, there's one word that continues to be heard, and that is equity. One major finding in the equity audit was for the district to develop a common understanding and definition of equity. And hold on, just, so, and then slide 4, for a brief history, in the spring of 2021, the quality review with an equity lens, or as we called it, the equity audit, was conducted by Cambridge Education. The selection process for the steering committee took place in late spring of 2021. And then in July of 2021, we had our first meetings together, which took place over a 2-day orientation. And then our monthly meetings began in the fall of 2021. And during those meetings, we developed a mission statement, analyzed each domain of the equity report, and we also collaborated and developed a definition of equity. In whole, we have conducted about 20 hours of work together, and now we're reaching out to the Milton community for input on our definition of equity. Meg?
Hi again. Thanks, Shelley. So again, I'm Meg. My husband Scott and I, we have 2 girls in Milton Public Schools. We have a 4th grader, Hannah, who is by my side right now at the Tucker. And we're having, it's bedtime. And we have a 6th grader at the Pierce. So let me tell you a little bit about our mission statement. Shelley mentioned that one of our tasks this fall was to develop a mission statement. And so that we could have, the statement was intended to ground the work and guide its direction. And as you can see, our mission statement is really in 2 parts, right? So the first part highlights our intention to be collaborative with key stakeholders in exploring district-wide data and experiences. We do not intend, right, to act in isolation from any of the other important equity work happening in Milton, but rather we want to work in partnership. We want to hear from and be informed by the voices of students and educators, administrators, and community members. The other part of our mission statement speaks to our intention to promote constructive discourse in the community. Equity, as everyone knows, is a community issue that affects all of us and really cannot move forward. We cannot move this work forward without community members engaging in authentic dialogue with one another and sharing their lived experiences, their ideas, and their visions. So you'll note that our mission statement speaks to achieving equitable experiences for all learners. We're concerned about the education and well-being as a district of all learners, not just some. Practices may look different for different groups because of their needs or experiences or current inequities. But the vision is an equitable education for all. That's what we bring as a committee forward. So why invest in equity? We wanted to, in our presentation, just pause for a second to remind ourselves why we're investing in equity. Why is this work so important? So Milton is investing valuable resources to ensure an equitable education for all. And attending to equity it's not a one-off, it's not divergent from the district's mission, but is very much in line with our values and priorities. Investing in equity is also about being responsive to community concerns. Parents and community groups have been working, as you know, in the district for years on issues of equity, particularly related to students of color and students with disabilities. There was a significant mobilization, as everyone knows, of parents and community members in the summer of 2020, advocating for the district to elevate anti-racism and equity work that would result in measurable outcomes for students. This was really a pivotal year in this work and for Milton Public Schools. And as a result of that mobilization, that activism, and that engagement, then Superintendent Gormley committed to conducting the independent equity audit, which we now know as the quality review. And as Shelley mentioned earlier, the quality review with an equity lens was conducted in the spring of 2021. The findings from that review confirmed what many parents and other community members knew from their lived experience, that there were disproportionalities and inequities in many areas of students' educational experiences. We've highlighted a few examples here, right, that were reported in the quality review. So we know that students identifying as African American or Black, their out-of-school suspension rate was 4 times the rate of white students. We learned from the review that 36% of LGBTQ identifying students reported being bullied versus 14% of students who don't identify as LGBTQ, so a difference of 25%. And the data showed that only 19% of students with disabilities met or exceeded expectations on the MCAS. So we learned something, right? And we know that and want these inequities to be addressed and more equitable outcomes for all students to be achieved. And we really think about the quality review as kind of the what of the process of moving equity forward in the district. The review highlighted and quantified what the problems are in terms of the inequities in students' experiences. But moving forward, we need to determine the why and the how, right? And so that's kind of what we're charged with. Why do these inequities exist? What are the root causes? And how do we address them? How do we work together to ensure more equitable experiences for all of our learners? And so we just, pulled a few quotes here to remind us that we need to continue to ask the hard questions, the why, that uncover the inequities and their causes. And we can't ensure equity for all students unless we are asking these questions. I'm going to turn it over to Monique to cover the next slide.
Thank you, Meg, and thank you, Shelley, and thank you to the school committee for this platform and opportunity to share some of our work. My name is Monique, and I am the proud mother of 2 current Glover students. And as Meg and Shelley have already highlighted, our work has been grounded in studying some of the recommendations placed as a charge to the district. And as been mentioned, and just to highlight one more time, one of the first steps is just the need for the formation of a common understanding and definition of equity. Therefore, when we're talking about it in different arenas, we are all kind of grounded in one aligned understanding. And so we have been, as a committee, working on this phase 1 and doing some deep work, both within the district in package this through multiple lenses. So including looking at what is current, what is past, reviewing the data that has been made available to us, looking at some of the current studies, both regionally and nationally on the topic. And from all of that, working as a collective group to forge together a definition that we want to bring forth to the public and use within our district and our community. And again, with the goal of having that common alignment, that language and understanding. And in having that foundation, being able to strengthen the current work and the future work across the town. And so we can move to the next slide. And within that, you will see the definition. I'll just pause for 2 seconds just so everyone can kind of process it. And then I'll also just read it aloud. So Equity means creating conditions in which learners of all identities have the resources and support they need to reach their full potential in order to thrive. And so this is what we are asking everyone, all stakeholders, to participate in giving us feedback on. We have a few ways that we are collecting that feedback. The most active is via a feedback form that has been distributed through multiple channels. We've leveraged Superintendent Jett's weekly update. We've asked the principals to support. We've reached out to the PTOs. We've reached out to different stakeholders within the community so that our community partners can be included, clergy, as well as our community organizing groups. We're very excited that, again, our efforts have been to get as many voices on this as possible, to have in the most recent week feedback from our student populations as well as our teacher, and looking forward in our next steering group to help to review some of that data. And we are here this evening to make sure that the voices of our caregivers, our parents, our school committee, and the greater community are also included. And so we ask in that and to look out for those updates. So again, we're just here as a portion of our steering committee, just to call us to action. We thank everyone. We know this work did not start with the steering committee. We know we have a lot of work to do in being a support to the district. So we thank those who have been leading this charge and ask for others to join us in helping to participate so that we truly can be a district that has a rich discourse. We make efforts to reach out to all students and put our hands together to kind of really help to revolutionize how we are looking at data and how we're looking at solutions so that all are included. So on behalf of the steering committee, we thank you for these minutes to help to share where we are, but more importantly, where we want to go with you. Thank you.
So thank you guys, Member White.
Thank you for this presentation. This was very interesting. One of the things I'm just sort of curious about is, as we look at the data that talks about the bullying information, the students' MCAS performance who are students with disabilities, and the discipline referrals, how do we look at that data given confidentiality? I was just sort of curious about that. How does that get shared? How does that get analyzed?
I could answer that initially. Typically, we don't, on that data that we got that information back, they don't give us specific names of who those students are.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, the survey was anonymous. It went to the third party, which was Cambridge Education. And what they do is they regurgitate that in the aggregate and just give it to us as a piece. But what it does is it elevated a concern or areas of growth or improvement that we need to make in certain areas to make sure that it goes back to Karen McDavid's presentation in terms of forging positive relationships. So if there's a child or a student that's having issues with bullying or feeling discriminated against, that they feel comfortable with at least one person in the building, in their building to speak to. If not, that they could use that incident reporting form online and remain anonymous as long as they give greater detail. And we'll talk a little bit about that at a later school committee meeting. But and I know the principals have emailed those forms home to everyone, and I put it in the blog as well, showing where to access the link. So that's how it gets looked at. We don't see the individual's names. Now, adjustment counselor, guidance counselor, school nurse, or school administrator might have specific names overall, because if it's brought to our attention, obviously you have to deal with it. And that is a way of getting those names and keeping and setting up safety plans for individuals like that. But as far as the steering committee members who are parents, unless of course they're a parent or guardian of a child themselves who had some challenges, they would not know who those students are. Dr. Carroll.
Thanks. And thank you, Shelley, Meg, and Monique for joining us tonight and sharing the presentation, and also just for volunteering your time to this committee and all the work that you've done over the past several months now. I think what I wanted to share, well, two things. I mean, first of all, I will just go on the record to say that I accept your call to action. And I think for anybody who follows me and what I speak about on school committee, that shouldn't hopefully come as a surprise. I really am committed to doing whatever I can to keep this moving in the right direction. And thanks for what you're contributing to it. The main thing I wanted to just voice is not, it's not a direct response to what you shared, but it's really just, as I see it, sort of part of holding ourselves as a team, all of us as a community accountable for this work. And just to note that I do share and understand the kind of reasoning behind being deliberate and intentional and seeking buy-in from the community. And I understand that takes time. And it makes complete sense that coming to that common definition of equity first and foremost is, like, as you've laid it out, phase one. I think even within the high level recommendation that you've kind of highlighted here, you know, it even goes beyond building that common understanding and definition to think about what does it look like in MPS. So even within this one high level recommendation, like, we have a lot still to do to kind of build out this phase one action step. And getting to see your presentation earlier today sort of gave me I guess a welcome invitation for myself to go back and look back at the report. And there's, on page 10 of the report, we have like a full page of the high level recommendations. So I want to appreciate the work that you've done and brought to share with us, and also just sort of help us as a community see this in context, which is we're halfway through the year, and we are halfway through this first high level recommendation of many. Okay. So I share the commitment to, you know, and the understanding that we have so much work to do. And I'm really eager to understand sort of the concrete steps and the kind of the plan for responding to, you know, not necessarily taking these one by one where it's possible to sort of take things together. I don't know, that's not well stated, but there are some pieces of this that it's necessary to go in sequential like order and build a strong foundation step by step. Other pieces though, I think we probably are already doing work that addresses these different high level recommendations, but as a community, we aren't yet sort of talking in a kind of like very strategic way about how these different pieces of work that are underway and that are planned, like how they fit together. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, kind of supporting however I can, participating however I can, and recognizing that it's not easy, and, you know, that we have a lot of people who have demonstrated their willingness to participate in this. And I'm just, that, I guess that brings me back to just appreciating you all. So none of that is I apologize for just putting that out as like a lingering question / wonder, I guess, and not a direct question or expecting you to respond, either you committee members or you Superintendent Jett, or my fellow school committee members, but really just to say, like, this type of work is the kind of thing that, you know, would be great if we are touching on it at every school committee meeting, you know, like every couple of weeks. What are we doing that, like, what's happened this month? What's happened, you know? And so it would be great to have you back to, you know, when the definition is, when you've been able to receive the feedback from the community and sort of come to that common final definition, that you could maybe come back and share that again here. and then, begin building out what it looks like, et cetera, with the other pieces here. I'm eager to stay in close contact with the work that you're doing, and just thank you again for it.
Member Rostetti?
So echoing Dr. Carroll, I want to thank you all for volunteering your time. I know that this was a significant commitment up front between the interview process and the professional development you participated in, so thank you. And I also want to thank you for including your mission statement, the understanding that the work around equity is to support all learners, and providing some definitions around the type of students that we need to be concerned about, because there is very much been a misperception that this work was targeting one particular student instead of just all learners. So I have a question, and it echoes some of the things that Dr. Carroll shared, which are around when we do have this common definition, where do we think our next step is to see this work to fruition? I know that this is a journey, it's not a destination, but being able to understand what you think might be next, or things that you may have discussed as a committee already. If you have that, I would love to hear it. And I also would like to know whether or not we can incorporate this work into the strategic plan if it's not already there.
Well, that's actually why we are doing this now, because this definition needs to be, everyone needs to be on the same kind of page going forward for the district, and it will be part of the strategic plan. And it's actually something we're actually meeting tomorrow to kind of work on prioritizing we've also been, part of our meetings have been analyzing the domains. There's been a certain process of analyzing the domains. So we go through that process as a group. So tomorrow we actually are meeting, we have our monthly meeting, and we'll be working on our, basically the top 3 goals. And that is supposed to be part of the strategic plan as well.
And I think we do have some recalibrating to do. I mean, just to say out loud and to acknowledge, there's been a shift, right, in the leadership of this group. So today was Somali Park Martin's last day. She was kind of the chair of our committee. And so we're kind of in I think a recalibration. We're excited to have Superintendent Jett working with us, to move this forward. But this is a huge job, right? And so we're eager to, figure out the next step in filling that position and having somebody, who's committed full time to do this and work with us and kind of help lead this group of volunteers. I don't know if that answered your question, Member Denny.
You did, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think Ada has her hands up.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see that, Ada. I only see a couple of people on my screen.
Thank you all for coming, and it's awfully nice to see you and meet who's involved in this equity steering committee, because we've been hearing about you for a while, but we haven't yet gotten to see you present, and I'd love to meet the rest of the committee at some point as well. I just wanted to affirm Shelley's comment that yes, in fact, the definition of equity is going to be an important part of the strategic plan. And thank you for the work that you're doing on being sure that it's one that is meaningful for our community, and engaging so many voices in being sure that the definition is clear and addresses what it is we're trying to do. Equity is, and I'm going to be updating the school committee on this soon in another agenda item. Very briefly, because we're not ready to present the strategic plan yet, but it's in draft at this point. But equity is one of our 3 goals. And so your work is critical to being sure that that goal sets us, the districts, on the right course in terms of how we're going to address this important work over the next 3 to 5 years. So beginning with the definition is a critical step, and I share my colleagues' enthusiasm for continuing this work. And the one question that I have is, how do these different groups relate? And I don't know, again, terms that I've been hearing about, the anti-racist action team, for instance. I don't know if that was ever formed. I don't know if that's a group that's actually happening. And then there's a cultural competency committee that had been working on the strategic plan for the last several years. And so I just don't know how we're pulling all those pieces together, because I think that it's important to have us all working in the same direction. And I don't know if you have any insights or comments on that.
I can make a comment on that very quickly, Ada, and I think that you recognize this. I think prior to my appointment, I think that, we had a very robust strategic plan, and we were trying to streamline it. Just as much as we have a very robust strategic plan, we have a lot of subcommittees that people are holding on to near and dear. And I think we talked a lot about this. Some of the work that we're doing is intertwined and should be woven and shouldn't be functioning in silos. It should be bringing them together. This was one of the conversations we have. So it's not that we're eliminating one over the other, but at some point in time, we need to talk about how do we consolidate a little bit to make sure that we're all working on the same page. Everybody's saying the same thing at the same time and moving forward. Because quite frankly, when you spread it and then you're losing faculty or you're losing staff that are spearheading these, and then it's like you're spreading people thin, and you might try to do too many things, too many meetings, too often, where you're not really connecting the dots. And that is our goal, to have this conversation. I will be having that conversation tomorrow night with the steering committee, not talking about abolishing, but how do we make those better connections with these groups. So
Excellent. Thank you.
Dr. Craighead, you might be on mute.
Why not? I just wanted to echo my colleagues' thanks. This was a presentation that I really needed to see to give me a sense of where things were. And I really appreciate, I know that you all are not just doing this in terms of your volunteer time. I know how much you're involved in other things. And so I really do appreciate your time. I also appreciate the fact that you're reaching out all across the community for feedback on a definition, because that's the way to help to inculcate the definition, right? That everyone has a hand in it. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think a couple of years ago, that's the way we would have done things. I think maybe a team of, parents and teachers and whatever would come together, create a definition, and that's what we would work with. But this huge outreach, I know it's going to be even more work, and it's going to feel unwieldy at times, because I hope you get that kind of feedback, that it's going to feel unwieldy. But I think this is definitely the way to go, and I really appreciate your efforts. So thank you very much.
Can I just add before we move on? I just want to say thank you again for the feedback. Thank you also for the questions. I think many of them I'm like, oh, I had that question. And so it's good to see that our compasses, although that we haven't had much overlapping conversation, are in the right direction. And want to just say that even in the midst of kind of transition, volunteers that are there are committed to this work. And that is very encouraging to me. We also, to a point raised earlier, know that the definition is kind of the ground and we need to see where to go up. We understand it's multifaceted, And I think some of the beauty of the group is that we're a mixed group. So as we're talking about these things, we have a student telling us the real experience. I'm there as a parent and I understand to make versus a 4-year change as it relates to my son and daughter. And so I think we are very personally invested. I also think we have a collective group of people that hopefully in our conversation with superintendent tomorrow, we can really start to break some rocks and I really appreciate this group's reaching out to say a continued collaboration, because I do think given how so many groups are doing it individually, we do need some anchors to kind of bring the work together and look forward to the opportunity again, whether in this space or another space, and inviting you guys to our meetings, we can kind of dive a little deeper to understanding the whys and the whats, as we mentioned, to build the solution. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Superintendent. Oh, sorry, Meg, go ahead.
Sure. If I could just circle back to something that Dr. Carroll had said earlier, and just to, I guess, underscore the importance of accountability, right? And I think in moving this work forward and holding all of us accountable. And so I think I speak for the group to say, like, we welcome the opportunity to continue to come back and report in our work. And I think I love the idea of looking at how do we build this into the agenda of the school committee, because it's not just, it's us, but it's also like, what are the boots on the ground doing too, right? And so how do we all kind of work together to hold ourselves accountable for this work? And we share your sense of urgency, just to, it has been slow and important and deliberate, and we're eager to continue to move this forward as quickly as we can move, because our kids need it, right? It's real people we're talking about, so and experiences. Yeah. Yep. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett. Thank you so much for inviting the steering committee tonight. I love the start of the definition, and I think it's the missing piece that will bring us more people into the conversation and get us moving as a community forward. So I'm very excited about that piece. I really think, Director Prack-Martin's talked often about the fact that we needed to have that common language and common understanding, and we sort of jumped in with all of us being at different pieces of that journey. And I think that your work is really going to ground that piece now moving forward. And I'm very excited to see where that goes, and to have everyone moving along in the same direction. So thank you so much for your presentation tonight. It was really fantastic, really, really. And as Meg just said, these are real people. And that, as Dr. Carroll said, the urgency, you can't even really speak to it. So thank you so much for the work. Shelley and Monique, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
And I want to thank all of them and those who are working with them, and Meg and Shelley and them. And you guys are the ones presenting this evening, but I know that you guys are representing a larger group. So thank you. And I hope you guys have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna jump in very quickly to the district update. I just want to quickly share with you guys that we reported to the state in terms of our numbers, 127 students that were positive from last Wednesday, this Wednesday, and only 3 staff. And when I say only 3 staff, I don't mean that in a condescending way. I just say that we're trending in the right direction, whereas 2 weeks ago, we were looking at an average of 75 staff out that first week, Monday through Thursday. So we're trending in the right direction. By now, I think many folks may have heard that the state made an announcement, DESE, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, in conjunction with DPH and the governor, a new testing initiative that's now on a horizon. I'm sharing this with the school committee very briefly, and I would ask for your blessing to participate in that new testing, that optional testing program, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. And I do apologize, it seems like it's rushed, but the deadline is Friday to sign up. It was just announced yesterday, early morning. We probably had, I think I shared with the school committee members, a 52-second meeting with the commissioner, and then it was follow up by an email for us to interpret. And then it was followed up with a webinar that took place this afternoon that head nurse of the Milton Public Schools, Kim Coughlin, and myself was on. So basically what it is we have the deadline of the 21st. I try to send a survey to faculty and staff this afternoon who would opt in. There's no consent needed because there's no third party information there's no information student data being shared with students. So you just have to opt in. We're able to opt in as a district because we were doing symptomatic testing. This was for districts who did symptomatic testing or pool testing. We have not done pool testing, but we do qualify under that. But they also given the latitude for other districts to join in. If we sign up by Friday, which I hope that you guys will give me that blessing, they will ship the iHealth testing kits that we passed out. I don't know if you guys could see it. The iHealth testing kits, they're shipped that starting Monday. So we'll probably get them on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday at the latest. And every 2 weeks, a staff member and or student will get one of these tests. So you could do one week and one the next week, and then we'll re-up and give them out the next week, the second week. The students will not start until the week of the 31st. And so they're gonna phase in staff first, then students, because obviously we need to get the consent from parents, not the consent, the opt-in waiver from parents. The reason, what's good about this, the state reported statewide, 98% of the students that participate in this test and stay program were negative. So now they're looking to shift, and this is an initiative to go from the 24th all the way up until the week before, the week of the vacation, April vacation, and then DESE and DPH will collaborate to see if this is something that they will extend or something that they will suspend. So we won't know that until about April vacation. The antigen test, which is a good test, and we were told that you don't need to require a second test, a PCR test. The antigen test is really highly sensitive for a vast majority of the virus in your system. So once you take this test, if you're positive, you assume positive, you don't have to take the PCR. The PCR is a little more sensitive, and that is why you hear the statement, if you test positive if you get tested with a PCR test, because it's so sensitive, it could get it detects small amount of virus in your body. That's why you could test positive up to potentially 90 days with the PCR test, because it's so sensitive. So this test, the iHealth test that we administer or hand out to faculty, staff, and students is something that we look forward to doing. I had this lengthy conversation. By doing this, you don't have to do as much contact tracing, which alleviates the burden on the nurses that allow us to do this. We're spending a lot of time on a test and stay, and with a 98% negative rate, we need to shift that and start doing some more surveillance testing to catch those who could be symptomatic. So that's pretty much the gist. I will be sending more information about this, and I'll take questions because I know there's a lot, because I have a lot. But we had a webinar. They sent us the follow-up webinar slide deck this afternoon after that webinar, but we didn't get a full chance to process it. But I could tell you, I've already reached out to colleagues in a quick email asking them how many people are kind of enrolling in this. And I would say a vast majority of the districts surrounding the Milton area, from Stoughton, Canton, Mansfield, Easton, some of the close districts here, Sharon, they're all going to be participating in this. And I think it's a great move moving forward, especially knowing that we're starting to see a trend in the positive direction. I guess I'll take questions because I know there's probably a few questions about the test and stay. They also offered a mobile vaccination clinic. We could sign up for that, but that could take anywhere, according to the webinar today, it could take anywhere 2 weeks to 4 weeks to get that on board. So that is something that we will look to probably access it as well. But more than likely, they'll probably go to your more larger cities or larger communities first to help maintain or support those districts with higher numbers. We have been very blessed that we have been able to navigate this with some challenges, without question, with some challenges. but we have been able to stay in school the entire time. And I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the work that our nurses, I think we talked about that the last meeting, but we're looking to engage into this new state testing option. Questions? I know it's kind of, I don't have a slide deck to show you right now, but I'd be more than willing to give an updated presentation more specific about this. And I plan on having a write-up in the blog that goes home tomorrow that explains it a little bit more in greater detail.
Superintendent Jett, Member Rosemarin and Member Ross Denny both
Sure
have their
thing.
hands up. So
Okay, sorry, I can't, I don't know.
no, that's okay. I'm happy to facilitate.
Okay, thank you.
And Member Rosemarin?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Jett. I gotta think this opportunity must come as quite a relief for our nursing staff. The number of tests that they've had to give, I was wondering if do we even know how many tests we've administered for the test and stay program, just to give a sense of the scale. Do you know that number offhand, Superintendent
I
Jett?
know we have that number, and I would say maybe about a month ago when I reported it, we were up to about 200 and something. But since then, I know that's grown, especially after the vacation when we had that week with all the folks. But unfortunately, I'm not prepared with that exact number right now. But I do know it grew significantly in the last 3 weeks. And that's without a doubt. I mean, we all experienced it as not only in the town of Milton, but in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the high rise in Omicron.
Absolutely. So couple questions I have about the implementation of this is, so when students and staff get these tests, is there a specific day of the week that people will be asked to do the test? How will that work?
So more than likely, so there's a lot of logistics that need to be worked out, but more than likely to be a Wednesday. We have a lot of holidays on Mondays. We have half days and things like that. So we're going through the calendar and try to figure out the logistics. Do we do it in one central location and have designated times for various schools, or do we do it by classroom and handing it out to students, and students are responsible for bringing it home? Again, this is hot off the press. The first we heard about it as superintendents was yesterday morning at 8:30. We didn't even know that this was going to be something that was even being considered or explored. But without a doubt, we would definitely like to jump on that. So there are a lot of logistics to come in. And then it also depends on how quickly we get the test. And I don't mean this in a negative way. If you think about it, the test and stay, they were all ready before the school year started. And then there were some delays. Over the vacation, they told us that they had all of these tests in hands for our faculty and staff. And then there was a delay. So they said that they will ship it on a Monday. So depending on the shipment, when it comes in. So I don't want to give a specific name, then people are waiting saying, why did you send home the test? Once we have the kits in our hand enough to support those who opt in, and remember, there's a difference between opting in and consent. And regardless of your vaccination status, whether your child is vaccinated or not, you can still get these tests. There's no penalty if someone decides not to do it. It's not like I can say you can't come to school, but we hope that everyone would do it for not only the safety of your child and people in your household, but the safety of other people within the classroom in their households as well. It has to be a collaborative effort to do this, to make sure that we're catching anybody that may be symptomatic or have the virus in their system and may be asymptomatic as well.
I have one more question. I'm sorry, then I'll stop. But I just am wondering about how do we deal with the families, students whose families do not opt in. I know with the test and stay program, it was very clear. If you don't do test and stay, then you'll need to quarantine if you're a close contact. But I don't know if that was made clear by the commissioner today or in their guidance, but it's—
Yes, I just mentioned that there's no penalty, and I can't force students to participate in it. If we do this program, I have to, with your blessing, I have to give Carolyn Casella, the Board of Health, a call to make sure that she understands that we're pivoting to this. That was one of the directives. Second of all, and I think this is very important to know, if you're a close contact in school, there's a certain guidance that we follow that you could take the test, and if you're still negative, you could stay in school. However, if you're a close contact outside of school, then it goes with the state guidelines when people are outside of the school. And the rationale behind that, we have a more controlled environment within inside of the school, where it's a less controlled environment outside of school. And I say that with all due respect to folks who even may be a little tighter on their bubble, but some people may not be as tight, and students might have a little more freedom, but they will have to follow the state guidance if they're close contact outside of school. And if you're not vaccinated, then you have to follow those guidelines as well. You know, the isolation days according to state guidance.
So Superintendent Jett, can I interject here for a second?
Sure
So
thing.
Ada, if I'm understanding this new system of testing, so a nurse or a healthcare professional in the district would notify you that there was a positive case. There will be no more close contact tracing. There will be no more notifying of people that you are a close contact. All of that will go away. You will be notified
With the exception.
With the exception.
There's a caveat there.
What is it?
It's your professional discretion. And that was one of the questions that Kim Coughlin was asking, and that's
Right.
one of the questions we have. Because if we have a classroom that for whatever reason, we see an uptick in cases within that classroom, then we can reinstitute that close contact tracing, that contact tracing for that particular classroom or their surroundings. And so it's a caveat in the little guidance down at the bottom, bullet number 3, that you could use your professional discretion to continue with contact tracing.
And so Superintendent Jett, help me understand. You're not asking people on every Wednesday at home to take the test and report it. This is a volunteer thing. Parents opt in, they have the test, but they don't have to take it every Wednesday or every Tuesday or every Thursday. Like, it's an option to monitor yourself and if you've been exposed and or if you have symptoms.
Right.
So it's different, right?
Right. And one of the things that they tell us, we hope that parents are honest and upfront with us and notify us if their child's a positive. And when they're sending it to us, it doesn't get recorded in the Maven system or DPH. It just gets recorded at the school. The way that it would get in the Maven system or DPH, to calculating the state numbers, and my hope is if someone's child is COVID positive and they have symptoms, that they reach out to their pediatrician. And then if that goes to the pediatrician, that's where it gets logged into the Maven system and DPH. But you're absolutely right. Contact tracing will be very minimal to non-existent as we move forward.
So it's right. It's super different than before.
Remember
I'm
Ross?
sorry. I remember Ross Denny had her hand up and Dr. Karen.
Now I want to thank Superintendent Jett and all the staff who showed up these last 3 weeks when it was very scary to be in schools. There's a lot of sacrifices made, and I recognize that this new proposed program, which I don't know in detail, will relieve burdens from the school system of we've become a healthcare provider. We're testing, we're doing reporting. This is not what schools were made to do. But a lot of things you shared makes me want to proceed with caution. More than likely, the data that the state collected to show that 98% of these students were testing negative was before Omicron. There's no question in my mind. I have tons of friends whose kids have allergies and asthma, and every little symptom caused them to participate in test and stay. And many parents were like, I just want to send them to school. I know they're fine. But Omicron changed the game. And the simple fact that when the tests were supposed to arrive for our faculty on that Saturday, I remember the emails you sent, keeping us well prepared, they didn't show up. And, when you really think about the reliability of getting tests to every single district in the Commonwealth, every single week through April, let's pause for a minute and think about the likelihood of that's going to happen smoothly. I would love to believe that is the case. And I would love to relieve the burden from the schools because this is not a healthcare institution. I just want us to think through, if the state falls through, what is our contingency as a district so we're not left flat-footed? And I want to apologize by making that request because it pulls you back into the healthcare field, and it is not fair. And I'm being very frank when I say that I think the expectations we've put on schools are very unrealistic. But what Member Everhart shared was that at the end of the day, we will be flying blind. If someone is sick in that classroom, you will never know. You will go home thinking, I'm great. And the reason why this is a pandemic is because of asymptomatic spread, right? If everyone who was sick had a fever and coughed, it'd be really easy to isolate, but that's not the case. And I have a feeling that if there's anything that happens between now and April when the virus tends to go down, like whatever the next Greek alphabet letter is, where does that leave us? And with that said, I will stop, but this all gives me pause when I think about more than likely the data was pre-Omicron and the likelihood of us getting the supplies from the state on a regular basis in the quantities that are needed. It's very low.
I will share this. In terms of the last week or so, there wasn't many, the week of the 3rd, when we returned to school, it wasn't many students that got it. They stayed out of school because they were positive, which was a good thing for us. We will stay in the test and stay in symptomatic testing until those kits come in. If those kits, and it will be every other week, because one box has 2 tests, so they want you to test once a week. So they're saying the shipment would come in. They got 20 million. They said they have 20 million test kits, 26 million test kits. So now until I see them in the Milton Public Schools and we count them and we make sure that we have enough for our students, we will remain in the test and stay model, and we will remain in the symptomatic testing. And again, I want to put emphasis on symptomatic testing to clarify, and I'll try to say this as much as I can in every forum. Symptomatic is not when your kid wakes up symptomatic, you send them to school. Symptomatic testing is when your kid is in school and we get to 11:30, 12 o'clock and they're not feeling well. They go to the nurse and then they will get tested. If they're positive, they would have to be isolated until someone picks them up. If they're negative, then they could definitely go back to class. But that's what, or they still might go home because they're not feeling well. That's what we've done on a normal year. But I don't want people to think, okay, well, you've been sick all night, you get up for convenience purposes, you could go to school, take the bus or whatever and get tested. We don't want that. But we're waiting to see what happens with these test kits. Dr. Carroll?
Thanks, Superintendent Jett. And thanks for reassuring around your sort of plan to transition based on the delivery of the test kits. I agree that, the rollout of some new initiatives has been bumpy from the state. So it's logical to sort of be conservative in, making sure that those get delivered. I do support moving into the, joining this new program. I mainly wanted to also voice my hope that we'll take Governor Baker up on the offer for the mobile vaccine clinic at one of our elementary schools. I know that we have continued to lag somewhat in our vaccination rate for 5 to 11-year-olds. And so I think, making that as easy as it can possibly be for parents to choose to vaccinate those kids or to just get them their second shot if they've already gotten their first shot. I think that could be a really important benefit. And even if it were to take 2 or 4 weeks, I understand if they're going to bigger towns first, but I hope we can kind of get in the queue for that opportunity. But thanks for the updates and for just staying on top of this fast moving situation, and look forward to learning more about it as we go forward.
Yeah.
And I would say on this call, if anyone, because the last time we tried to get the vaccination clinic at the school, and this is something that I explored with Manette Community Health Center, particularly for those who are 5 to 11, because of the age of the group, the youngster, you needed to, what are the things, they wanted more medical staff on hand, they needed a pediatrician or a family doctor on hand, which we could not do. The second thing I will say, the last vaccination clinic we did for, I think it was a little more than 3 hours or so, there was about maybe only 28 people that came through. That was back a while ago. However, anyone is having problems getting the vaccine, the first shot, second shot, or the booster, if you want, you could just reach out, and we try to provide different opportunities and schedules where you could go and get it in the interim. And then we explore what it is that Governor Baker, and I just want to say this to you guys, and I hate to say this to be a pessimist, it goes back to what Member Ross Denny said. But if you remember last year when we started out the school in the summer, they boasted about the mobile testing unit. And that was in the summer. And we had our breakout at the Pierce October 3rd. And when we called, we didn't have access to that. And we had to work with Fallon Ambulatory Services to kind of contract, and Kim Coughlin did that. And I'm not saying anything negative. I do think it's a very lofty goal, and we got to make sure that the distribution is there. And so we'll wait to see if that comes in, but all it is a matter of us opting in. Yep. And if it doesn't come, we just stay the current course. Yep. And if it does come, then we'll figure out all the other logistics. Yep. If you remember the last kit we got, we had to, even for our staff, we had to open them up, separate them, and make copies of the directions because it wasn't enough to give to people. So that's the piece that, you will always have to work on. So. Yeah.
I mean, the superintendent, like everyone, I think it's a great step forward. To Member Ross Denny's point, I do think that during these 3 weeks, from my own experience with the test and stay, what the test and stay has shown is that it's not spreading in school, right? So like if you have a close contact and you're in school, like you've been a teacher or a student, the test and stay has shown through that it's not spreading in school among students. And so I think having an option, I think that's a really good point, Member Ross Denny, having a backup plan, so that in case they don't show up because everything has been a little bit challenging, I think is a great idea. And I it's a hopeful sign, that we're going to be moving in a different direction, I hope. But always having a plan is a good idea. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So let us know. I think it's really important to Superintendent Jett to just lay it out in very simple so that people understand. I just think it's important people understand what is the difference in the.
Do you need a vote on this, James?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think you need a vote, but okay. I didn't want to move forward without your blessing. And if you do want to take a vote, it's totally up to you. But they said, some districts have to go to the school committee, or said that the school committee asked them to go. So I'm just asking you guys, but with such a quick turnaround, I'm just very blessed that we have a school committee meeting this evening. Because they just announced it yesterday. Some people don't have their school committee meeting until next week. Right. So they're going to be a little bit behind that. And if we opt in on the 21st, then they'll ship our stuff on the week of the 24th.
All right. Keep us updated. And thank you guys. Member Ross Denny said, we really can't thank all of you enough for the last couple of weeks, which have been harrowing, to say the least. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like school, right? It just feels like, a lot of conversation about medical stuff, but it's an encouraging sign, hopefully, for the future.
Absolutely.
Superintendent Jett and members of the school committee, we do have, Charlene did send us the program of study, but I think the goal is for all of us to read the program of study, and we're going to discuss and vote on it at the next meeting. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That is correct. Because
the high school is going to come. If we have questions, the high school will come to our next meeting, Dr. Craighead?
Yes, the high school could.
Yeah, I just had a question, because one of the things that's included in the program of study is the dual enrollment, but we haven't voted to approve that, have we?
We have not. And
so
just to give you a follow-up.
One before the other is all I'm saying.
Okay.
Right.
So the only thing that you guys wanted a follow-up report on with the dual enrollment was whether or not Quincy College will come back with a reduced rate. And I'm sorry, the name escapes me right now, but the contact at Quincy College said at this point in time, they cannot go any lower than what has already been a discounted rate. However, we are committed as a district to try to find, different resources to try to support any student that may need it. So that was the lingering concern and question, as far as I could recall, about that. Unless, of course, anybody else has any additional comments, but I did email Chair Abahat and Member Ross Denny with that update. And I'm not sure if I included all of you, and if I didn't, I apologize.
You did.
Did I? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think Dr. Craighead, to your point, so that at our school committee meeting on the 2nd of February, we would have to first vote to approve the dual enrollment at Quincy College, and then vote the program of studies. I'm understanding the correspondence correctly, right? From
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just making sure that I'm not missing something tonight.
That is, if we approve it, then it can go into the handbook, but it can't go before. I mean, the program of studies, but it can't.
Right, and they're not going to give out the program of studies until after we vote on the 2nd.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Jett, for that really informative update. We're going to have an opportunity for citizen speak right now. If anyone is here for citizen speak this evening, they can raise their hand and you will be promoted to speak to the school committee. The parameters of citizen speak is that you have 3 minutes to speak. It would last no longer than 15 minutes in total. You would state your name and where you live. You will address the committee, but the committee will not respond to any of your questions or comments. And we ask that you speak to our policies and our budget, but not to people in the district. So if you would like to speak, a citizen speak, and address anything on the agenda this evening, please raise your hand and someone will raise your. I'm assuming that somebody can do that, right?
I don't see any hands up at the moment.
You can give it a few.
Yep, no hands at the moment.
Right.
Chair.
Well, if someone has any, after you see the meeting this evening, or you have a chance to watch it afterwards, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us, and then and we can try to address your questions or concerns through email or at another school committee meeting. All right. The only item on my chair's report is to vote a revised draft calendar. So to review, what we are doing is we are voting a draft calendar, which means we are voting just basically the start of school dates and the current holidays as they are presented. We know that we are going to add, change, or address some other holidays that we would like to, but we need to approve a draft calendar so that we can set the start of school for next year. That makes sense, everybody? So that we have, okay, so the motion on the table is to approve the draft 2022-2023 school year calendar.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? You can see that Superintendent Jett added the early release days in November, December, and February.
Late
I'm sorry?
Delayed starts.
Oh, I apologize. Where are the delayed start days?
It's the very last one. I think it's light blue, if I'm not mistaken. In the little grid to the side there.
Did I put the wrong one again?
No, it's there. It's in light blue on the document.
Yeah.
Morning PD for teachers late start.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I apologize. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
That's
yes.
right.
No, that's okay.
Be nervous.
Okay. No. Of course, it's not really in color, so I had to look for the code. It's my own fault. I don't like to waste ink. And I know I shouldn't be printing it, but I'm an old person. I can't help myself. Does anyone have any questions about the draft calendar? Yes, Member Rosemarin.
Thank you, Superintendent Jett, for adding in those late start dates. I think I fully support working in some additional opportunities for professional development for our staff. I was just wondering what kind of a timing would that be for a late start? Would that be the same start time? No, it couldn't be the same start time across the district, right? How would that work?
Each school will start at a 2-hour delay. It would be a 2-hour delay for each school.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's great. And again, I want to thank Charlene Roach for all of her work and reformatting this calendar, and it's hard to make it all fit, but if we can figure out how to get it to all fit on one page, that would be, she's probably going to kill me for saying that.
No, I think it's just the way that it came out. I think it
Yeah.
was.
It'll be really small font.
Right, you have to read the
you have to
calendar
go
with
in
a magnifying glass.
So that really people like me have to have a magnifying glass, exactly. Anyone else have any questions about the draft calendar? Okay, so then a motion on the table is to accept the draft calendar. It's been seconded. We're going to take a roll call vote. Okay, Member Ross Denny.
Yes.
Member Rose Marin.
Yes.
Member White.
Yes.
Dr. Craighead.
Yes.
Dr. Carroll.
Yes.
And Member Abahar, yes. Okay, wonderful, 6-0. All right, we are going to, Member Rose Marin wanted to give us a quick update on the strategic planning before we vote on before we talk about the budget. Is that right, Member Rose Marin? You're on.
You're on mute.
Yep. Let me get off of mute. Yes, I just wanted to give you a quick update on the strategic plan and where we stand because the budget presentation that you're about to see has some references to it. And I just wanted to jump the gun a little bit and let you all know what's going on. So as you know, the Strategic Planning Advisory Committee has taken on the challenge to update and streamline and revise the Milton Public Schools strategic plan, as Superintendent Jett generously calls a robust plan. It's had been in place for 3.5 years, has 6 goals and 59 pages, and it was it was a little overwhelming for some. And with our new superintendent and with all that's happened in the last couple of years, we felt like it really was the right time to revisit and streamline the plan to put the Milton Public Schools goals at front and center for all of our staff, families, and students. So the Strategic Planning Committee met on October 19th and talked about this work. And we identified a team of volunteers among the staff who would do some of the groundwork in putting this new draft together. And we were very fortunate to have Susan Maselli and Kara McDavitt agree to lead that group work. And I am very grateful to that team. I mean, they have it's sort of an all-star list of people who are on the committee. And what we plan to do is the plan is in draft form right now, but it needs to be vetted by a number of internal teams that have a role in it, various aspects of the plan. And we want to have the opportunity to do that before we bring the final draft to the school committee. And so the plan is to do that additional internal vetting and then bring it back to school committee on February 16th for a presentation and possibly a vote at that meeting if we feel ready to do that. And if not, we'll take a vote at the subsequent meeting. But just to give you the heads up that you've probably already seen in our budget presentations, the 3 goals very much aligned with the goals that you heard about in the Glover School presentation, the equity, safe and supportive schools, and personalized learning. And those are the 3 primary goals, and that all will work together to hopefully move the district forward. And the goal being that it will be something that will help to drive all of the work for the district over the next 3 to 5 years, and that it will be something that everyone will understand and feel invested in and a part of. And so I just wanted to give you that heads up and that you'll hear a more full report. We'll bring the team in and they'll tell you more about the work that they've been doing and report in with a final draft in mid-February. So any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
We look forward to hearing from the strategic plan. Sounds exciting. All right, we are Dr. Craighead, Superintendent Dexter, Jets, and Keenan. Here we go.
Okay, and it's an early 9:17 as we begin the budget presentation.
Sorry, Elaine.
A minor detail. So in all seriousness, I'd like to open this by saying that this is the culmination of months of work. Assistant Superintendent Dexter has certainly gone through the budget process before on the town side, but this is the first time that she has done it from soup to nuts on the school side, and has done really a stellar job putting this together, and spent many, many hours working with Superintendent Jett, him working with the leadership team, certainly talking to the communities at all the different schools and making sure that we had a comprehensive idea of what we needed in the budget. I would also like to thank all of my colleagues on the school committee, certainly especially the two individuals who serve on finance, members White and Ross Denny, but also I want to let the community know that there were other members of the school committee who were constant presences at the finance meetings, even though they were not members, and were very involved with it as well. With what you're about to see, which Assistant Superintendent Dexter is going to take us through, and Superintendent Jett as well. Some items are listed as ARPA possibilities to the far right. ARPA stands for the American Rescue Plan Act, and it'll say ARPA P3 or P4. That's Project 3, Project 4, whatever it might be. Those are still included in our budget because they have been neither vetted nor discussed nor approved by the select board, which is where all ARPA requests have to go through. And if they're approved by the select board, then they move forward to the state. We have no way of knowing whether those things will be funded, so they have to be part of our budget. And many of them are in our top 10 priorities. All of them are crucial needs due to the pandemic. I'd like also to say that we all recognize that money is tight. And that there are needs across the town of Milton. The police, the fire, the libraries, council on aging, everybody needs more money. It's just the truth. But it is also our duty as school committee members to not only advocate for the schools, but to demonstrate to the community what our needs are, what they are now, what they are likely to be going forward, and give you a sense of what our needs are, regardless of how much money there is to be had. The district, of course, needs to regain and ultimately move forward, but just regain the high level of success and student performance that we saw previously to the pandemic. And I spoke about this a little bit earlier with the fact that we need to address learning issues, learning losses, social, emotional needs that are caused by the pandemic. And it's really not so much a question of moving forward at this time, as I said, as just trying to work toward regaining that previous level of success. And then, ultimately we can move on from there, but we're not where we need to be. We're just not. And it's going to take resources to get us even back to where we were before the pandemic. We are presenting our rollover budget plus our top 10 priorities for FY23, but we are also including all of our needs after that. The priorities 11 through 17, and then more priorities. We are also, in the interest of full disclosure and transparency, trying to show you the depth of the needs of the Milton Public Schools at this time. We've included separate sections on needs that could be paid for with one-time funds. And we've, as I said before, included things that could be covered by ARPA, but again, we have no way of knowing that at this point. After the presentation, a school committee discussion and vote will follow. We will also be presenting this budget to the warrant committee on Monday night. It's posted as a full school committee, so any school committee members who wish to attend may do so. There's no limit because of quorum issues. And so that ends my introduction. I'm going to hand it over to Assistant Superintendent Dexter to take us through the nitty-gritty with the numbers. Thanks.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I can't see it over there. So if it looks like I'm looking to my left, I have two screens and you guys are on my right and my presentation's on my left. So I might look like I'm talking into nowhere. But first I'm gonna hand it to Superintendent Jett, who may want to just say a couple words before we start.
So thank you, Amy. And I was going to make some of the comments that Dr. Craig had made about us recognizing that we're in tough economic times and challenges out there. However, there is some money that is being funneled in on the town side through ARPA, CARES Act money, and things like that. And we're hoping to illustrate to you the depth of the needs that we have in the Milton Public Schools in terms of enrollment. And we get into a lot of that as we go through the presentation. And I will also state that we plan to do a more robust presentation for the community to afford community members to ask questions. This budget right now is for the school committee to give us the blessing to move forward. So I do want to let people know this is not a one and done. And we also have, I believe, a scheduled meeting next Monday at the warrant committee, potentially. So thank you. No, I thought Dr. Craighead's opening statements kind of pretty much conveyed the message that I was going to share. So thank you.
Okay, so I'll get started then. First of all, the first slide, we're presenting the top level summary of the fiscal year 2023 operating budget for the Milton Public Schools. Throughout the slides, you'll hear me refer to a rollover budget. So first and foremost, I just want to explain what that is. A rollover budget is basically taking the fiscal year 2022 current operating budget, rolling that forward for any contractual obligations as far as salary and wage contractual obligations. That would be steps, lanes, wage adjustments, other contractual obligations such as legal, electricity, utilities, things like that are not controllable, as well as a big item is special education costs, which we are legally mandated to provide, and we are experiencing an increase in the number of students requiring services. And there is a significant impact on that line item of the budget. in the rollover budget itself. So this first slide is presenting not only the rollover budget, but also what I will refer to as the needs-based budget, which takes into consideration all of those other asks that are mostly positions that we need in order to operate the district, as well as some professional development and other needs that you'll see in curriculum too, that you'll see in some later slides. So the current rollover budget for FY 2023 is $58,054,115, and the total needs-based budget is $60,502,746. The next slide is just taking those numbers, the previous slide and this slide, those categories are categories that we report to DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And this slide is taking the previous slide and just breaking it down into a pie chart so that you can see that the instruction costs alone account for 45.7% of the school's operating budget. The next largest item is special education, which accounts for 27.7%. And then instructional leadership, 7%. And as you can see from here, things like policy and admin, facilities and technology are a very small percentage of the overall operating budget for the schools. And another way to summarize that request would be of the rollover budget of 58 million, almost 48 million or 82% of that is salary and wages. Very small percent is contractual non-salary, which includes special education costs, as well as other things like utilities and things like that, which is 15%. And then the discretionary amount that is more like controllable, like supplies and things like that, is only 2.7. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room to change this without eliminating positions, which we can't afford to do with our increasing enrollment and our increasing in our special education needs. And again, this pie chart just breaks it down by those categories. So you can see salaries, 82%. This slide here is, I wanted to try to represent how we get from fiscal 22 to the, not only the rollover budget, but as well as the needs-based budget. So our fiscal year 22 budget is 54.8 million. We have 3.2 million of rollover costs, of which 2.4 million are salary contractual obligations, as well as an additional 804,000, which is non-salary, of which almost 600,000 is special education. The other items are minimal compared to the salary increase. And then to get to the 60 million, 1.7 are other personnel salary needs, and 712,000 are other needs, of which the biggest part is new curriculum in our math and social studies areas. One of the things that was mentioned at town meeting last year was the total cost per student or total cost per pupil of the operating budget of the Milton Public Schools. And there were some questions regarding that. So this slide presents Milton's total expenditure per pupil for the last 5 years that is available on the DESE website. So that's only through 2019-20 because the last fiscal year 2021 hasn't been posted yet. But Milton, out of 401 districts reported, Milton ranks 315, with number one being the highest total expenditure per pupil. Milton is 315. We're approximately $15,508 per student in the 19-20 year. compared to other local districts that we tend to compare ourselves for. So we're significantly lower than some communities that we consider are comparable, like Brookline and Wellesley, that are closer to 21,000 per pupil. The state average is 17,575, so we're also well below the state average of cost per pupil. I just want to clarify that total expenditure per pupil is not just the operating budget of Milton Public Schools. It's all expenditures of Milton Public Schools, whether it's operating budget, grants, revolving funds, gifts, as well as indirect costs on the town side departments that can be allocated to the schools, such as like medical insurance or costs for salaries of the personnel at town hall that support the schools. This chart here just shows that same information in a bar chart form so that you can see Milton is the third to the last on this graph, or the third lowest out of the communities that we are comparing ourselves to. At this time, I'm going to turn it back to Superintendent Jett, where he's going to go through some of our goals and strategic items.
So thank you, Mrs. Dexter. And with all due respect, Member Rosemary stole a little bit of the thunder talking about the three major pillars that we're trying to identify, and not trying to, making a strong push to narrow down the strategic plan. But these are the three pillars, which is personalized learning, the safe and supportive schools, and equity in learning. And so the budget that we will be presenting to the warrant committee, in addition to our enrollment and student needs, is tying to some of the goals and initiatives of the Milton Public Schools. And as you can see below, it talks about the strategic goal of the Milton Public Schools is to provide students with a highly personalized, developmentally appropriate, emotionally safe and equitable balanced daily learning experience that is designed to ensure each becomes a productive, caring, and contributing member of society. Very long, very winded, but very powerful and very important in terms of that first sentence. It is the goal of the Milton Public Schools to ensure that students can achieve his, her, their post-secondary outcomes and goals as measured by the analysis of the information obtained via the district data cycle. If you saw the presentation right before the break, and we did a follow-up presentation on the 5th, we spent a lot of time delving into the data. That data deck slide is on the website, and we will be talking about that as we continue to do some of these budget presentations for the community to give you that, afford you the opportunity to ask questions if you have any. Next slide. Strategic initiatives, personalized learning. To give it a definition, all educators will learn about the use and monitor personalized teaching and learning and instructional practices. This is really just identifying and understanding the strengths of the students in your class, their cultural identity, their race identity, their strengths and weaknesses. We also talked about the social emotional learning, behavioral health. All you have to do is turn on the news. That's under the safe and supportive schools. We have a lot of students that are struggling. You're seeing an uptick in behavior all across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in terms of student behavior and needs. 20-something months over student isolation, social distancing, and masks, being out of school, making those connections with students. This is huge for us to make sure. And I think Karen McDavitt elevated the importance of this in her presentation earlier. And I think it was echoed by Dr. Carroll saying, you got to make sure that you support students' social emotional well-being in order to achieve at a higher level. And then the equity. All educators will have the opportunity to build their capacity, practice, and progress monitor and iterate the equitable and inclusive educational practice to leverage some of the students' unique learning identities, ensuring that all students are making progress academically, socially, emotionally, behaviorally, and cognitively and culturally. Next slide. I put in the presentation some of the goals of the district and the superintendent. As we know, going all the way back to September, October, where goals were discussed, school committee had their goals. The superintendent have my goals, and we talked about it. We want to make sure that all of our students K to 8 demonstrate grade level proficiency in ELA. I thought Ada Rosemary elevated that at the last school committee meeting, talking about the 25-35% of the students on ELA not making or meeting grade level proficiency at the 3rd grade. This is something we want to hope to funnel in. You heard Karen McDavitt earlier talk about the work of the reading specialists and how important that was. And you're seeing some of those scores rise now that we're back in school. In June 2023, looking at the disproportionality in grade level proficiency, K through 8, and hopefully eliminate or substantially reduce the proficiency gap between African-American students and students of color and their white counterparts. By September 23, MPS will evaluate all the intervention supports and programs to assess the effectiveness of each and look for opportunities to implement other research-based interventions and programs. I think Member Ross Denny talked about this quite a bit. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You look at districts that are making significant gains and what is it that they're doing, or look in-house and look at the work Karen McDavitt is doing and replicate that across all 4 elementary schools. And hopefully they're doing some great things that she could replicate, and we elevate the student achievement across the board. We're going to continue with our training. We have 24 faculty and staff members. They're going to be continuing with the trauma informed to be peer teachers and support for the Milton Public Schools faculty and staff. We continue to incorporate the IntelliSpot screener. I think that they talked about getting that data and using that data to identify initiatives and supports for our students that we may need to kind of support them. And I just talked about the 24 folks that will continue to do the research and identify evidence-based initiatives in response to student self-reported assessments and their social, emotional, and behavioral health concerns. We're going to continue with that work. Next slide, Amy. But one of the biggest things that we wanted to elevate is our immediate concerns and then our future concerns. The immediate concerns is our growing enrollment. Many of you know that we have made some converted certain spaces in all of our schools to accommodate our growing enrollment, increasing class space, office space by cutting places in half, by utilizing the libraries in the Collycott Cunningham. We're looking right now, Bill Ritchie went over to the Glover School. We might have to utilize a little bit of the Glover School to accommodate some of the growing enrollment. We had a lot of students that moved in over the course of the last couple of months, or I should say since October 1st, when we report our enrollment data. Without question, we have some unfinished learning that was made evident by the data presentation, the 2 different data presentations that we had, coupled with the fact that we knew some of our students that were fully remote from March 13th all the way up until this year, September 1st. So we want to make sure that we have programs, supports, multi-tier supports in those classes and offering to our students. Without question, enhancing the student achievement for all students, in particular our marginalized students and those who are identified as African-American, Latino, special education, supporting them, even though some of our data shows that our special ed students, our students on IEPs did make a little bit of an increase, whereas some of the other subgroups have dipped a little bit. We're going to continue to focus on our social emotional learning and behavioral health. And then we need the professional development. I think we talked a little bit about it in the calendar. We have a limited number of professional development days where we can have all staff come together looking at the data and working and talking and having that discourse about the data, initiatives, student learning, teaching. So we hope to do it. And this is I listed some of the different professional developments that we have in the appendices. You'll see them described a little bit more in detail, but for the sake of this presentation, we're just highlighting them. We have a growing pre-K program. We have to add some of that because it's swelling right now at the elementary level. We might have to add a class in the coming month or 2 to lower that, a sub-separate class, because students are being evaluated and needing additional support or identifying as needing additional support. And then also the curriculum review and enhancements. We talked about it, the math and social studies at the elementary level. Next slide. And Janet Sheen is going to talk a little bit about this. We all been working with Brian Seelig and Kim Kaplan on a curriculum review that their departments are undergoing. And when I say the departments, it's kind of some of the same teachers, because at the elementary level, the elementary teachers teach all of the content areas. So it's kind of unique doing two curriculum reviews at the same simultaneously, but it's being done. Janet Sheehan, are you on? I can't see with the slide.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I am, Mr. Jett. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, just to add what Mr. Jett just shared, we are conducting a comprehensive curriculum review in both of these content areas, in math and social studies, and again, led by our Director of Mathematics, Brian Seelig, and our Social Studies Curriculum Coordinator, Kim Kaplan. They have formed representative committees that are engaging in the use of very specific protocols for curriculum review. And they're looking to, of course, select high quality instructional materials that are challenging and that are also differentiated so that they will meet the needs of all students. In math, we're further along in the process, but both of our committees have been able to provide an estimate of costs. These are indicated here as one-time costs. There may be opportunities also to spread payments out over a few years, something that we also could consider if this is a great challenge for us. I think that we're going to be bringing Kimberly Kaplan before the school committee at a future meeting to share more specifics of the process. The committee is very excited about piloting some of the instructional materials that they're looking at, and they have received a multitude of materials from publishers. What is very, I think what is really interesting about this curriculum review is that teachers are going to have an opportunity to actually teach lessons using each of the programs that they're reviewing. So I think it's going to be a very exciting process, and we look forward to sharing more. And as I said, math is further along, and we'll keep you posted on that.
If I could just add something, we are pursuing all possibilities of trying to find some grant funding that may pay for a portion of some of these costs, as well as in some instances, we're looking into if there's the possibility of trying to spread it out over more than one fiscal year, because we do acknowledge that this is a large sum or a large ask.
Thank you, Mrs. Sheehan. Ms. Dexter, next slide. So as Dr. Craig had alluded to earlier at the start of this presentation, we kind of prioritize some of our staffing needs, but quite frankly, all of the things that are listed in this presentation are in need. But if we had to prioritize, this is what we came up with as a group of administrators and curriculum coordinators. So math interventionists, on numbers, test scores have dipped, not only in the town of Milton, but across the state. In our math, we need to bolster up our support for our students and catch them early on in their educational experience. We all know math is a cumulative subject, so you need those building blocks to make sure that you're up to par and moving forward in the right direction. The reading specialists, we talked about two of them. In number two, excuse me, the second one on the list, Karen McDavitt talked a little bit about it, and you had a reading specialist as part of her presentation and the great work that they do, bolstering up the supports needed for some of the students. Pierce Middle School, High School Guidance Counselor and 504 Coordinator. For those that don't know, if you look at the guidance staff at the middle school, you only have 3 for approximately on average 380 15 to 18 students per grade, 321 in grade 6 and grade 7, and slightly lower in grade 8 at 2, I think it's 80 something at the moment, or last I checked. So we want to make sure that we have the supports necessary for them. It's not just students on IEPs, but students with 504s. There could be medical 504s. There could be short-term 504s. And then it could be students who have challenges around staying focused, attention deficit disorder, social emotional disability, temporary or long-term, but we need to make sure that we support those students. Kindergarten aides, we already have 12 of them. And we're talking about increasing them from a 0.8 to a 1.0, and just for a full-time FTE, full-time employee. And for those that don't know, these aides support us in terms of the supervision of our students in the cafeteria and at recess. And as it stands right now, on average, we can have anywhere from 1 adult to 60 students. That becomes a concern about safety. We're very fortunate that we're strategizing and trying to support to maintain that safety and supervision, but that is definitely needed. So again, I want to, it's not an add in staff, it's just an increase to their day. Then we talked about the student adjustment counselor to support our students socially and emotionally. That is without a doubt a given, is just as important as our nurses. Our special education team chair, this is something that needs, this is a person that helps facilitate meetings, evaluations, coordinating with outside agencies, outside medical professionals or therapists who are writing reports. This is desperately needed to support our teachers so they can execute their craft within the classroom, and they handle a lot of the meetings and setting up the schedules and collaborating with administrators, teachers, and adjustment counselors, and even the nurse on some cases. Lunch recess aides, 5 part-time for the very same reason that I talked about the kindergarten aides, making sure that we're supporting folks. The kindergarten aides are within the classroom as well, but sometimes we need to utilize or extract people for extra support and supervision throughout the day. The world language teacher at the middle school, this is very important with our growing numbers, and our students take a world language. A small number come out of a world language if they're on an IEP, and that's when we have to provide that service. But right now, if you look at the middle school, there's a total of 26 classes with 25 students or more at the middle school level. 5 of those in the world language department, and 4 out of the 5 are in the Spanish section. So we need that support. For those who don't know, that's what helps us balance the class sizes, the 4 core subjects, math, science, English, and history/social studies. But and then they also have their 5th core class is a world language. And then finally, the high school math teacher right now is a desperate need. When you look at it, all Milton High School students are required to take 4 years of math. Some of our students as electives are doubling up. Due to the pandemic, there's a significant demand on greater supports and reduced class sizes within the math department. And if you look across the 3 tested areas compared to the other tested subjects, the math department has 1.4. So a full-time teacher in 0.4 of the second teacher, less than ELA, and a 0.4 less than the science department. So again, just similar to the elementary level, high school numbers are growing as well. And we have senior privileges this year where students, if they completed all of their credits or they're online to complete all of their credits, they might have a late start, early release to help us with that, that growing enrollment at the high school level. Some campus might have what you call an open campus. We're not calling it an open campus because we don't want an open campus right now. But that's what we're doing to try to alleviate some of the pressure that we have. So all 3 levels are swelling in terms of our enrollment. Next slide. Now this is getting into positions 11 through 17. I will highlight the science one, and I'll bring it to your attention. If people recall last year in December at the special town meeting, we were awarded 6 positions. One was the science position. And because we were unable to fill that position with a new hire full time, we did make it up with our Vice Principal Ben Kelly taught a science class, Kara Yifru, the biology teacher taught an extra class, and Amy Tom, the science department head, ended up teaching a class to make up for that position that we were not able to fill. We put the second math teacher on here is equally as important as the first, but we were trying to prioritize and spread the wealth because there are needs in all of the levels. So math teacher is needed for the same reasons I just explained. The exploratory teacher at the middle school, that could be civics education, that could be more technology, but that's needed when kids go off team. If you're in grade 8, all grade 8 students may go off team at similar times, but it allows us to balance out those exploratory classes. When I talked about 26 of the classes being 25 or more students, 21 of those classes are your exploratory classes. Then we'll talk about early childhood education coordinator. For those who don't know, that is John Redden right now in his duties as a elementary principal. He's also serving as the pre-K coordinator for his building, and also Dr. McNeil Gamai's building in terms of their pre-K program, trying to collaborate. Our pre-K numbers are growing as well. And there's a lot of work that's done on that end many, many years ago. Current school committee member Ada Rosemary serves as a liaison or a support for us at that level many, many years ago. But it is a need. There's a lot of responsibilities, and we need to provide that support and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to put our pre-K students in a successful position. Getting out of the blocks on the right foot is going to help shore up grades kindergarten 1, 2, and 3. And so we're looking for that. We talk about a career technology teacher, and that runs the gamut in terms of technology courses. So I just want folks to know that is an exploratory class at the high school level. Once again, when students are not in math, English, and science, they have 7 periods, but 6 periods a day. They're on a rotating schedule. And then without a doubt, and we've been in this as well before COVID, but part-time school nurse needs to be a floater to support floaters to support the health department in the Milton Public Schools. And we talked about the recommendation at the elementary level. It's 1 nurse to 500 students in the ideal situation. All of our schools are above that, with the exception of Tucker. And at the secondary level, the middle and high school, is 750 students to 1 nurse. And we are obviously above that by almost a couple of hundred at each of the different levels, if not a little bit more. Next slide. So I won't go through all of this, but we talked about, the professional development or the goals that we have. Folks can read through this. We have the professional development description in the appendices. But for the sake of time, I just go through a couple of these. The equity department operating expenses, that may change with new leadership in that department. We talked about professional development beyond the bell, which is a program supporting our elementary students. Paraprofessionals, as we know, as the elementary levels grow, particularly in our pre-K and kindergartens, as those numbers grow, the supports that we need within those classes is going to grow. Also, the number of students that are moving in that might come with an IEP that requires a paraprofessional, that's beyond our control, but that's not only a contract with the Milton Public Schools, it's a contract with the state. High school French teacher, numbers are growing in all of those departments in the world language. I should have said there's a total of 71 classes at the high school level that has 28 students or more. 71 different classes. And if you add in the music classes, that will rise up to 76. And I didn't count the music classes initially because typically your chorus, your band, and your strings ensemble, they do run rather large. But think about the 71 courses that we offer to 28 students or more. So the Naviance license at the high school that allows students from their freshman year, and we were talking about the possibility of extending that down to the middle school, but this is all of your information that you keep track of moving as you matriculate through the grades, 9th grade all the way up to 12th grade. It's a hub for all of your information, career inventories, study habits, keeping track of community service hours, your recommendations, your transcripts, all of that stuff is, and then it's a communication system as well where the guidance department can communicate directly to the students. And so that's the list, and you can see that comes out to about $675,000. But these are some of the needs that we have that we're going to be going to the warrant committee and we're presenting to the community, and hopefully there's an appetite to support these initiatives. And I share that because oftentimes we're compared to these other districts. And as you can see on one of the slides in the appendices, when we talk about the math interventionists, there's a slide in there that shows Milton compared to other districts. Milton has 6 schools with not one math interventionist. And then you look at it in comparison to some of the other schools, they might have 3, 4, and in some cases 5. So that concludes this slide, and we'll talk about it in greater detail. But in the spirit of time, I just, next slide, Amy, or that goes into the, yeah. So as you can see, there's supplemental schedules and data that folks could kind of go through that kind of presents a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And it gives you greater detail. But for this evening, that concludes that budget presentation. This will be on the website at some point as well. But like I said, we hope to be presenting to the warrant committee and then to the community, Milton community as a whole.
Okay, thank you very much. The only person I see with the hand up is Dr. Carroll. And I think we need to keep the presentation up. So Dr. Carroll,
I can follow the hands for you too, Dr. Fredhead.
Oh, okay, great. So Dr. Carroll and then Member White.
Thank you.
And Member Ross-Denny too. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll be quick. Thank you so much. I just want to express my appreciation because each time I see this presentation, it's clearer, more detailed, but also more streamlined. And thank you for all the work you've done in between each of the versions I've seen, which I know are only some of the many more versions Finance Subcommittee has seen. So thanks a lot. A quick question I have is, you mentioned the possibility of spreading out the one-time costs for the new curriculum over more than one fiscal year. Would that delay the implementation of bringing out, or sorry, I'm so
There's a
tired.
couple of issues at work here, and then I'll let Assistant Superintendent Dexter jump in if there's something I'm leaving out. If we want to have them paid for one-time costs with free cash, they can't be paid out over a number of years unless we put them in our operating budget. So there's an incentive to have them paid as one-time costs. Mm-hmm. If by stretching them out, Assistant Superintendent Dexter was alluding to the fact that maybe social studies would be delayed, for instance, and then math would be implemented or something along those lines, then we could still pay for it with as a one-time cost, not bringing it into our operating budget, but we would have to delay, as you alluded to, we'd have to delay the implementation.
And so that depends on how much free cash is available.
Correct.
Which we do not yet know.
I don't know. Free cash has not been certified, as far as I know.
Okay.
So I have no idea what's available, or even I have no idea what amount is there or what would be available to us out of that amount as well.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that as we float the possibility of spreading it out, that we keep in mind the consequence to the students of the delay of the implementation in messaging that to warrant committee and so forth. Right. But thank you for clearing that up.
Member White, you were next, or at least I saw your hand next.
I just was going to mention a couple of things. Amy, I think this is excellent, and the work you did is really impressive. When I'm thinking about the fact that we meet with the warrant committee maybe next week, and then thinking about our audience at town meeting, I would suggest that your first slide, which breaks down the different categories for the budget, which go like policy and administration, instructional leadership, instructional services, special ed. I think you may need to understand who your audience is and elaborate on what all those are, because I think people maybe in education might know what policy and administration might mean, what instructional leadership might mean, but I think a lot of folks don't really know what that means. So I think a couple of sentences to say, this category includes the superintendent's office. This category includes this group of people, this group of educators. I think that would be very helpful because I think you'll get some questions about that. And then I think that in general, when we talk about salaries, people always stand up at town meeting and sort of talk about steps and lanes and how much the raises really are. I think you've got to be prepared to talk about that this is how things are done in education around the way that staff get compensated for, you know, continuing their education, for working on their master's degree, for, you know, for basically for becoming better teachers. So I think rather than be defensive about that, I think it might be very helpful to be, you know, forthcoming about that as a way that our salaries are developed. And then I was also thinking that if Sue Maselli could join us for the warrant committee meeting next week, you know, she did yeoman's work at one meeting that we sat at that I thought was, she really helps people understand the complexities of, I mean, the whole department, the whole educational, this whole budget is very complex. You know that. We all know that, but I think that Sue really speaks to the complexities within her specific department very, very well and very forcefully. So I would hope that she could be invited next week or whatever night we end up meeting with the warrant committee.
Yeah, I've already asked for Sue Maselli to be there if she can, if her scheduling allows. Thank you. Member Ross Denny.
I want to thank the members of the school committee as well as the administration for putting together this budget and, more importantly, aligning our goals with our needs. I think there's a lack of awareness sometimes that we have very high expectations for the performance of our schools, but our budget doesn't always align with that. And if we could go to slide 6, where it shows how chronically underspent Milton is relative to our peer districts. And if we want to have the high school ranking and the high achievement that we aspire to gain, that we need to fund a school district that can actually achieve those. And I think that what has been presented in this budget reflects our capacity to actually meet those expectations. And I also want to commend the faculty and the staff in our schools who have been able to maintain our ranking in spite of a decline in spending between school years 2019 and 2020. It speaks to their dedication and their willingness to roll up their sleeves and do things that are above and beyond what's expected. And I'm going to use one simple example of our nursing staff. Given our ratios pre-pandemic, we were understaffed. And then we overloaded our nurses with the additional burden of having to do contact tracing, having to administer test and stay. And I think this is a great opportunity to highlight for our community the needs that we have and the fact that we've had unrealistic expectations of many people for a long period of time. And whether or not we are able to achieve the financial support that we need to manage the district for the next school year, I would like to consider this the beginning of a very long conversation across the planning board, the select board, about how we can use a mix of revenue to meet our needs so the schools aren't inadequately funded. Our fire department, our police department, all the departments of the town deserve the resources they need to function adequately to meet the expectations of our citizens. So thank you all for your hard work on this.
Dr. Carroll, I see your hand. Is there anybody else before I go back to Dr. Carroll? Is there anybody else who would like to speak for the first time? No? Okay, Dr. Carroll, you're up.
Sorry, just one more question based on something Member White mentioned, and it connects to what you were just saying, Member Ross Denny. if in anticipation of questions on steps and lanes and that large majority of the budget taken up by salaries, I'm wondering if we could be prepared, not with a slide added into the presentation, but just to have on the side if the questions come. What are comps for teacher salaries, starting salaries in these comparable local school districts, including, which is not included as a comparable, but it's relevant as a neighboring district, Boston Public Schools. What is a Milton Public School teacher coming in at versus at steps and lanes versus, Needham, Boston? I think that would potentially also help and, make that case that, we actually are not paying our teachers more than any of these other places. We're actually paying them lower amounts, and just wanted to make that additional suggestion.
Dr. Carroll, that is a good point. The teacher's contract is a public document, and the steps and lanes are right in there in terms of the salary page. And we can look at this year's, obviously next year. This is a negotiation year, so we have to see, but you put it in, but it varies. And and that's a good point, and we should have said that. When you look at the $75,000 that are on some of those full-time employees, that is a plug number that's like an average, because depending on who we hire, like your math and your science teachers usually come in a little bit different, because your English and your history teachers are the ones that are probably remain in their positions a lot. It's harder to get science teachers, particularly at the high school level, because they have to be certified in a specific content area, like chemistry, biology, have the physics and things like that. So it depends on the years of experience, your education in terms of the number of degrees you have and how many credits beyond that degree. It's a little more complicated, but you are absolutely right. In comparison to some of the districts, Milton is either on par and in some cases probably a little bit lower if you go just by the years of service. We might be able to get that, but it might not be as easy to do that by Monday or within next week, because you're asking people to send out their contract pages and then doing a comparison. But we definitely could take that contract page and even put that in the slide possibly.
Member White?
I was just going to say, I think it might be helpful even for town meeting if you think about asking like maybe some of our like Canton and Needham, Randolph and Stoughton, like just to pick out 4 quickly. What is a starting salary for a new teacher who's just like coming for the first time to teach? How does Milton compare to that? And then what does Milton look like 5 years in and 10 years in? So it's just to kind of look at the fact that sometimes you do hire an experienced teacher who's coming in on step 5 or step 6 or whatever. So I think that would be a good comparison, because I don't think, historically, I know I used to look at this all the time when I worked in Dedham. I think Milton had a higher starting salary than other districts, but not so much as time went on. But that may have changed over the years, because I haven't looked at it probably in about 4 or 5 years since your new contract.
Other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, I am going to find my motion page. Oh, this was easy. I'd like to make a motion to approve the FY23 budget as presented, as the figures, maybe not all the slides, right? But the figures as presented tonight, to take to the warrant committee to present on Monday, the 24th. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. This will be a roll call vote, and I can't see everybody. Margaret, can you see everybody?
I can. So,
okay.
Member White?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, Member White?
Yes.
Okay. Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll? Yes. Member Rose Marin,
Yes.
Chair Everhard,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, thank you all very much.
Well, I want to thank you to this, to you, to Member Ross Denny, Member White. I know to Member Rose Marin and Dr. Carroll, who attended many meetings. This was and Superintendents Dexter, Sheehan, and Chad. This is an amazing budget. Really crafts some of the things we've really been talking about over the last year or so, and captures the goals that we talked about, and keeps the students at the center. And that's the key. So we're going out there and we're going to advocate and fight for the budget and support the rest of the town at the same time, as Member Ross Denny said, to be the best quality that we can.
Okay, so I have a few other things. It's a longer, in lots of ways, it's a longer finance report than usual. Next, I have good news to report that the Copeland Family Foundation donated to us $63,974 towards the purchase of 2 Minotaur DRW 051 MS, if you're into these, the model, the exact model, school transportation vans. We were able to, we had to sell the 2 vans that we had previously because we weren't allowed to, the way that they were fitted or not fitted actually, we were not allowed to transport students in those vans. But so between the trade-in costs of the trade-in value of the 2 vans that we had, we are able to, with this money from the Copelands, we're able to purchase 2 vans. Those 2 vans, and this is just excellent news going forward. I like a gift that keeps on giving. So those 2 vans are, if we use them an average of 4 to 6 times a week for athletic, just athletics during the 10-week season. And we can also use them for clubs and other activities. We use them for smaller teams for athletics. We can save in 1 year between $45,000 and about $68,000 every year. So that's an amazing, oh, thank you, Superintendent Jett. Is that what they look like? Really? That's kind of amazing. So we will save, in signing these vendor warrants for all these years, the costs for extra buses, for athletics clubs, special events, all that stuff is astronomical and can range anywhere from maybe $300 for a short something to hundreds of dollars, depending on the length of the trip and the amount of time the bus driver has to be there. And so we're going to save a lot of money, and we'll save that every year. And given that $70,000 is the cost of a regular school bus for an entire year, we could approach that amount. So this is a great gift, and thank you to the Copelands. But we have to vote to accept it. I can't imagine that anyone wants to say no, but we have to formally accept it. So I need my motion page again. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the donation by the Copeland Family Foundation in the amount of $63,974 to be put towards the purchase of 2 Minotaur school transportation vans. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. This is also a roll call vote. Member White?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member Rose Marin?
Yes.
Chair Everhard?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Again, unanimous. Thank you. I also have another piece or 2 pieces of good news to add to that. And that is that our state senator, Senator Walter Timilty, has secured for Milton Public Schools from ARPA funds. He has earmarked for us $50,000 for the HVAC improvements, and given how much our systems have been running during the pandemic, like they're running 3 times or at least twice as long as they ordinarily do, because they're running constantly 24/7. So we have $50,000 to go toward improvements for the HVAC system, and he's earmarked for us $50,000 for the improvement of Brooks Field. Is that correct? It doesn't say it on the piece of paper. Oh, yes, it does. Brooks Field.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's $100,000. We don't have to vote on that, but I just wanted to pass along that good news for our facilities.
And can I just give a piece of clarification on that? I got a call from his chief of staff today. The $50,000 it was earmarked for the HVAC system. They sent out another signature page that went to the town. Apparently that had to be approved by the strong town administrator. So it went to him, Mike Dennehy, and he did sign it. So I'm just letting you know, but it is for the HVAC system.
Okay, great. Okay. That's excellent. So thank you to Senator Timilty for that. And I'm sure Bill Ritchie is, doing a little dance of joy about getting that extra money. So that's really nice. And finally, the usual, I'd like to make a motion to approve vendor warrant number 29, payable January 13th, 2022 in the amount of $286,769.28. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Member White?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Chair Everhard?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And I have to drop off the meeting because I have another capital improvement meeting very early.
Dr. Craighead, thank you for all your work on the budget and Superintendent Dexter.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you to superintendent and assistant superintendents. It was great.
All right. Okay, so now it is 10:18. We are now breaking our own policy. If we look at new things after a certain time. So I have a question for you, Member Rosemarin. What was your update on the school building committee, or do you want to postpone that to another time?
Let's postpone it to another time.
Okay. I would like to approve the minutes if there are any questions, or because we're supposed to approve minutes within a certain time frame, right? So we have minutes on this agenda from the 15th of December and from the 5th of January. We could do just the 15th if people haven't had opportunities to read them, and do the 5th the next time, if that works for all of you. Does that work for all of you?
Mm-hmm.
You feel comfortable with that? Okay, so I can make a motion to approve the minutes of our December 15th, 2021 school committee meeting. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay, does anyone have any changes or concerns about those minutes? Okay, so this will be a roll call vote then. Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Dr. Carroll?
Yes.
Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
And myself, yes. 5-0 and 1. Dr. Craig has adjourned from the meeting. So January 5th, we can vote at our February 2nd meeting. That will still be within the time frame that we can approve them. All right, we don't have any old business that I'm aware of. We are going to, at our next school committee meeting, which will be on February 2nd, we are going to have the Milton High School Site Council come, and we will approve, hopefully, the program of study. We will have a curriculum and instruction advisory committee update. We will have a policy committee update. We will most likely talk about finance because we will have already been at the warrant committee. Is there any other subcommittee? Oh, we will have a school building committee update since we adjourned that.
Health and wellness.
Health and wellness, okay. And we will at some point, so I will email Superintendent Jett, and then we can discuss at the next school committee meeting. We will need to looking at a formative assessment for the district as we move into mid-year of the first year of this year for Superintendent Jett. So we can discuss that. It's not a lengthy process, but we have to figure that piece out for probably the beginning of March. But that's all that I have. I don't think I'm missing anything from our next meeting. Strategic plan will be on the 16th. That's correct, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I know you want to move Polycott. I will talk to Superintendent Jett.
Yeah. I think having both those presentations in one meeting would be an awful lot. We
Okay.
have another
And
night
I-
like this.
And I do have one follow-up. So thank you to Superintendent Jett and the administrators that worked with him to get the reporting system updated.
Oh, yes.
I would love to get an update on, in terms of the procedure implications of having this new system.
Okay.
Who's looking at the data and how are they responding? Just so that the community is aware.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for reminding us that. And then Superintendent Jett, you can update us at the next school committee meeting on the open positions in the district of Assistant Superintendent and Director Prack Martins. We can discuss that. We should extend our thanks to Director Prack Martins since today was her last day on the job, and thank her for her work on equity and the committees that she formed and the work she did with the community, and wish her well in her next phase of her career.
So thank you, and I will be doing that, but I was hoping to be able to post the assistant superintendent with the timeline. It was going to be articulated in the blog tomorrow with the entire community, so they would know, and then we would start the process of recruiting at least four or five community members. With that, but I would be happy to discuss that at any time.
Yeah, just some updates, I think, particularly, Member Rothstein, did you have a question? Go ahead, sorry.
I would like to understand whether or not our intent is to utilize a search firm to support us in identifying a pool of candidates for the assistant superintendent role.
So I would be more than happy to share that with you. I actually polled some of the superintendents, and out of all of the superintendents that responded, which I think was about over 50 of them, and I'll be happy to share that data with you. Only one used a consultant firm to kind of search for assistant superintendent curriculum in human resource or assistant superintendent of business. Doesn't mean that we can't do it. I believe I shared that in an email. I just don't know where that money's coming from when we know we have to onboard a teacher at this point in time. In the one firm that the one outside organization that they used was MASC. And they do that work along with NASDAQ. They do that work as well, helping to do that. But no, we haven't determined to go in that direction of using an outside consultant firm.
Member Rothstein, thank you for that comment. Perhaps we can touch base about, speak to Superintendent Jett this week, figure out where that's moving in that position. But it's important, I think, to update the community, just the community where we are. And I think particularly if we can outline the process for the Director of Equity positions. I didn't know that we just did the hiring policy and we'll have a committee and things like that. So it'd be good to update everyone. All right. All right, I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting. I thank you all. This was a very long meeting, just like I know that you all be very glad when I'm no longer in charge and there's not too many more meetings. I don't know what to do except to add more meetings. I'm sorry. I know it's really late, but it was such an excellent meeting with so much good information. So thank you to everyone for the length and the lateness and the time. I know everyone gets up really early to go to work. So anyway, I'm making a motion to adjourn this meeting. Anyone want to second it?
Second.
All right. This is a roll call vote. Member Rosemarin.
Yes.
Member Rothstein.
Yes.
Dr. Carroll.
Yes.
Member White.
Yes.
Member Eberhardt. Yes. All right. Thank you all very much. Be safe out there and enjoy the days. See
Good
you
night,
soon.
everybody.
Good night.